Life is Strange is unique. It's left an impact on me that's lasted for years after my one and only playthrough has ended. And since then, I've been wanting to talk about why. No one could have imagined that one day games would be able to deliver an emotional experience on par with that of a film. It's amazing to think about how the first video game, just a handful of pixels being bounced across the screen, has progressed to bring us complex characters and compelling narratives. Game designers have found a way to take the unique aspect of player agency and use it to create games that deliver a narrative in a way that no other medium can. There's something special about having control of a character, having a say in the story. It invests you in a way that sometimes other media just can't. There have been dozens of games which focus mainly on the story rather than on the gameplay, Life is Strange being just one of them. It sounds counterintuitive, a game whose gameplay serves mostly as an assistance to the story it's trying to tell, but these games have created something unique. And Life is Strange may just be one of these games, but I believe it to be one of the most unique and important games to have been released in the last decade. It does something that I find to be truly interesting with its story, in which the player's actions affect the outcome, or in some cases don't. Many of these narrative games come under criticism for their stories, as it's not a simple task to create one. A choose-your-own-adventure book, except every option needs to lead to a satisfying end, have fully voiced and animated characters, account for every variable, character death, or relationship change, and needs to be released by the end of the next quarter. Reading reviews, it's easy to find players upset with the superficial gameplay element advertised as player choice. Typically, after a player reaches the end of their supposedly unique story, upon replaying the game or watching someone else play it, they discover that choosing different options doesn't always change much, that the story stays mostly the same regardless of what they picked. Many would call this a failure of the game design, but I'm not so sure it's that simple. Firstly, what exactly is successful game design? How can you truly tell when a game is quote-unquote good? Everyone's tastes differ, so how can we ever come to an agreement? I believe the answer lies somewhere within the intentions of the creators. Every creator has a goal when they create something, a way they want their audience to feel after experiencing it. If a director puts a scene into their movie with the intention of making the audience feel sad, and many reviewers comment on the sadness they felt while watching it, then I would consider that a success. Even if you don't like sad movies, the director accomplished what they set out to do, and that sounds like a success to me. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be analyzing Life is Strange and its many, many complexities. I'm going to analyze the techniques used by the developers, the themes and the plot devices such as chaos theory, the narrative and gameplay devices used to deliver the story, and try and discover exactly what the developers, DONTNOD Entertainment, wanted us to feel when we played Life is Strange. If I can figure that out and compare it to the experience the game delivers, I think it's possible to measure the game's success. So, let's start at the beginning. Episode 1 of Life is Strange begins in media res. Upon choosing new game, the first things we hear are the cracks of lightning. And the first thing we see is a girl we don't know, lying unconscious in the middle of a storm. We don't know where she is.
Where am I? What's happening?
Upon awakening, it becomes clear to us that the girl doesn't know where she is either. Dazed and confused, the girl comments on the solace of the only notable landmark she can see, the lighthouse. We, the players, are now given control. and as we move the girl toward the lighthouse, we see the cause of the storm, an astoundingly large tornado just off the coast. It feels as if the tornado is nearly on top of us, before it suddenly flings a boat into the lighthouse, causing the spire to break off and fall down atop the still unknown protagonist. But just before it lands, she awakens.
That was so surreal.
Famously called film Little Pieces of Time. But he could be talking about photography.
The clock is ticking.
Okay.
The girl is seated at a desk
class.
while a man drones on in the background. And the girl's inner voice narrates her thought process as she calms down from the nightmare she just had.
To chiaroscuro. Now,
Immediately, we as the player know something is off.
The human condition in
I
black
didn't
and white.
fall asleep, and that sure didn't feel like a dream.
Looking around the classroom, it's not very large at all. If what the girl just experienced was a nightmare, surely someone would have commented on or scolded her for falling asleep during class. However, no one seems to be the wiser to what the girl just experienced.
And frankly, it's bullshit.
This cold open sets the tone for the game. It creates an air of mystery, raising many questions and giving just enough answers to keep the player's curiosities at bay. Rather than dwell on the nightmare, the game immediately thrusts us into the life of a high school girl. The instructor is still lecturing while thoughts race through our heads, and he begins to ask questions. Thankfully, he doesn't call on us. This gives the player a chance to wind down and become acquainted with their surroundings. While seated at our desk, we have a myriad of things to look at in front of us. We can see an old Polaroid camera, a self-portrait taken with said camera, and the girl's school supplies.
I can't believe I still have this pencil case.
Upon looking at them, the girl comments on each one, giving us, the players, an idea of the type of person she is. Quiet, old school, insecure, maybe trying a bit too hard. On the very right, and probably noticed last, is the girl's journal. By reading it, we discover the girl's name, Max Caulfield. She's a budding photographer who left her home of Arcadia Bay, Oregon to move to Seattle to further her education, leaving her best friend Chloe behind. After moving, however, she found that she couldn't quite fit in the big city, and after being accepted to the prestigious art school Blackwell Academy, Max decided to move back to Arcadia Bay, more excited than ever. These handful of journal entries bring us right back to present day, and give us a much more fleshed out idea of who Max is. Max also keeps notes on prominent people in her life in her journal, including classmates and her new photography teacher Mark Jefferson, who we can assume to be the instructor currently lecturing in the background. The other two classmates you can observe in your journal are Kate Marsh and Victoria Chase. The former is a quiet, devout Catholic girl who has become seemingly more quiet in the past few weeks, whilst the latter is, in Max's words, a total bitch. But the character introductions don't stop there, oh no. Inside Max's journal interface, we can also access her cell phone, which is filled with conversations that happened previously. Here, we can see sparse messages from Max's parents wishing her a happy birthday, with no reply, awkward yet polite tea sessions with Kate, and a plethora of unanswered texts from a boy named Warren. Right away, the game presents us background for not only our protagonist, but main characters who we haven't even met or spoken to. It really helps add to the game's atmosphere and helps set the world as something that is living and breathing even without the player's interactions. Not to mention, it gives the player that feeling of being a fish out of water by introducing us to all these characters, causing us to try and determine their relationship with Max. The game simulates that scary feeling of the unknown by dropping the player into the shoes of a character who has only just recently moved to a new school, and I think it creates a feeling that reflects what we can assume Max is feeling. This reflection of the player feeling how Max is feeling is going to be a common theme, so I'll be pointing it out a lot. After we've had plenty of time to take a look at our surroundings and try our best to get acquainted with our situation, eventually we'll notice that rather than just looking at Max's camera, we can press another button to take a selfie with it. Maybe not the best option to do considering we're in the middle of a lecture, but if for no other reason, we're tempted to press it just to see what happens. Once the extremely conspicuous selfie is taken, Mr. Jefferson notices and comments on it.
Gosh, I believe Max has taken what you kids call a selfie.
He seems mostly unfazed, cracking a joke and weaving the interruption into his speech.
Your generation was not the first to use images for selfie expression. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
This brief interaction gives us a very quick insight into his character, making him seem calm and easygoing. He's no pushover, however, as he quickly turns the table on Max and asks her to answer a question. We're actually given a choice to answer, and this is our first dialogue choice in the game. If we hadn't already gotten a clear picture of Max's character by now, this first dialogue choice really sells it. The entire point of the game is that we, the players, can make choices that change the story of the game, and our first choice is to pick from two different yet equally awkward versions of, I don't know. Believe it or not, this first dialogue choice is heavily reflective of how the rest of the game will play out. Even though we as players have agency in this story, we're still playing as Max Caulfield, and as such, we only have agency through her actions. If Max doesn't know something, we don't get to answer. While the game will eventually give us decisions that give the player an excess of control, it just as often gives us choices where we have no control. Sucking it up and basking in the awkwardness of not knowing the answer to a question, Mr. Jefferson cuts us off and asks if anyone has actually read the material. Another girl is quick to answer, and hey, what do you know? It's Victoria Chase. She gives the most hoity-toity answer in the history of photography, and then gives Max a
"Now you're totally stuck in the retro zone. Sad face."
less than stellar insult. The total bitch thing is starting to make sense. This is our first glimpse into one of the major criticisms of the game, the dialogue. I'll be going more in depth into that a little later, but this weird line is a sign of things to come. After a bit more lecturing, class comes to an end. Everyone packs up, and Mr. Jefferson explains that some students, including Max, have not yet submitted a photo to something called the Everyday Heroes contest, of which the winner will be taken to San Francisco and have their artwork displayed at a prominent showcase. If we hadn't already discovered this through the journal entries and text conversations, this is a great indicator of how Max tends to avoid her responsibilities. Speaking of avoiding responsibilities, the game allows us to do just that by finally giving us the first of what I like to call walk-arounds. These make up the majority of the game, where the player is plopped into an environment with things to look at and people to talk to. It's pretty standard stuff for these 3D visual novel type games. Since I haven't talked about it already, this is a good time to bring up the game's visuals. Personally, I think it looks gorgeous. DONTNOD worked around the limitations of the game engine and their budget and created an appealing aesthetic that evokes realism through art. The models are decent enough, but the lighting and the textures are what really makes this game. Everything looks like it's been painted or drawn. All the textures are made to look as if someone had hand-painted clay models or put something together by scrapbooking. It gives the entire game a serene, storybook feeling, and the dynamic lighting and reflections help make the game feel more alive. The game's visuals are almost universally praised, and it's pretty easy to understand why. Anyways, we're given some time to simply walk around the classroom and just look at things. We can look at the table. We can look at people. We can look at Victoria's tablet that she left sitting out on the desk. Max has something to say about everything, and Hannah Tell's soothing performance as Max really adds to the relaxing aesthetic of the game.
I hear that.
After a brief bit of walking, we discovered that besides talking to Kate and looking at mundane objects, there isn't much to do in this room, so we should probably be
I
leaving.
see you, Max Caulfield. Don't even think about leaving here until we talk about your entry.
Well, I guess we'll talk to Mr. Jefferson first. Again, it's these little things that really help sell the world and the characters as people with their own goals and desires. In reality, it's an invisible progress barrier that means we can't leave until we talk to Mr. Jefferson, but it's presented in a realistic way. Mr. Jefferson, although clearly firm, lauds Max for her talent at photography, once again reiterating that he thinks Max has a gift, drawing mean looks from Victoria, who is cozying right up to the professor. This brief conversation really cements the relationship both of these characters have with Max. After encouraging us to enter a photograph to this Everyday Heroes contest, we're forced to pick another poor excuse for why we haven't turned something in. Mr. Jefferson explains how he understands how much of a drag it is to be lectured, but he clearly seems to want Max to take initiative so she can succeed. Once we've had our discussion, we're finally allowed to leave the classroom. As soon as we step outside, we're hit with a barrage of conversations and people. These characters are actually talking, and we'll see many of them again later, but we don't know who they are yet. Max takes a moment to step aside and put in her earbuds, drowning out the sound of life with some relaxing acoustic music. This is a great place to bring up another one of the game's strong points, the soundtrack. While the game has 8 original tracks composed by Jonathan Morale, it also uses licensed tracks from artists like Sid Matters, Foles, Alt J, and more. As someone who has always had an appreciation for finding the perfect track to use while creating videos, these songs are a fantastic touch and really help set the mood. There are many standout moments for the game's soundtrack, and I'll talk about them more when they come. Equipped with her anti-conversation earbuds, Max is free to walk up and down the halls of Blackwell, observing the goings-on and commenting on her peers while she struggles to remember their names. After the high-tension cold open, this is a nice moment of calm to help contrast that feeling. We'll be seeing this contrast of tension a lot, as the game tends to alternate high and low tension scenes to help pace the expository segments with the story and character development segments. After we're done gawking at our surroundings, Max comments that she wants to stop in the bathroom to wash her face, so we do. She's relieved to find that it's empty so that she can de-stress in peace. The music comes to a stop, and we're left sitting quietly in the bathroom for a bit when a blue butterfly flutters in through the window. Once it lands, we're introduced to another mechanic, taking photos as Max. We can approach the butterfly and take a picture. Hello?
It's cool, Nathan.
What is...
Don't stress. You're okay, bro. Just
Hello?
count to 3. You own this school. If I wanted, I could blow it up.
Excuse me?
So what do you want?
Who's this?
I hope you check the perimeter, as my step-ass would say. Now, let's talk business.
I got nothing for you.
Wrong. You got hella cash.
That's my family, not me.
Oh, boo-hoo, poor little rich kid. I know you've been pumping drugs and shit to kids around here. I bet your respectable family would help me out if I went to them. I can tell everybody Nathan Prescott is a punk ass who begs like a little girl and talks to himself.
You don't know who
Whoa.
the fuck I am or who you're messing around with.
Where'd you get that? What are you doing?
Nobody would ever even miss your punk ass, would they?
Get that gun away from me, psycho! No!
Whoa. What the fuck?
Oh! Just as you're getting comfortable in the game's world, and some of the more keen players likely wondering what the catch is, the game throws the main gameplay device at you like a football to the face. Max, for unknown reasons, gains the ability to rewind time. While she sits quietly through a lecture she's already experienced, Max discovers her ability and begins to test its capabilities. After accidentally knocking her camera off the desk, we can rewind time a few seconds before it happened, restoring it.
I
Now,
did it.
Can you give
I
me an
actually
example
did
of
it.
a tar-
After once again failing to answer Mr. Jefferson's question, we can rewind after hearing the answer and get a free redo.
Now, Max, since you've captured our interest and clearly want to join the conversation, can you please tell us the name of the process that gave birth to the first self-portraits?
The Daguerrean process, invented by a French painter named Louis Daguerre around 1830.
Somebody has been reading as well as posing. Nice work, Max.
But of course, the important thing about this power is that we now know what's about to happen. Someone's about to get shot in the girl's bathroom, and we have to do something to stop.
I see you, Max Caulfield.
This again. It quickly becomes apparent that time continues to move exactly as it should if we don't change anything. After quickly talking to Mr. Jefferson once again, and maybe rewinding to give him a more satisfying answer, we leave the classroom for a second time, booking it to the bathroom. Once inside, Max begins her inner monologue as she hatches a plan. Max retraces her steps, doing everything as she did the first time around, and the two characters begin sharing their same dialogue. So far, so good. As Max, we can quickly take a hammer from under the nearby custodian cart and use it to smash the glass on the fire alarm, causing a big enough distraction for the girl to escape unharmed.
Wait!
Don't ever touch me again, freak!
Since this event is timed, and many players are still getting a grip on the rewind power, it's possible to run out of time. If the girl is shot again, the player can simply rewind. Max can only rewind up to a certain point, however, until the edges of the screen begin to burn like film, and Max is visibly pained. Even still, you have plenty of time to allow yourself to succeed. Upon doing this, it's possible to discover that objects on Max's person stay with her as she rewinds time. That is to say, if you picked up the hammer, then rewound time, you don't have to pick it up again. You've already picked it up in the future. This is an interesting peek at one of the themes that is about to become extremely prominent, the butterfly effect. More on that in a second. After being questioned by an overzealous security guard, made more frustrating considering he somehow missed the kid running away with a gun, We bump into the principal as we're leaving the school, and we're presented with our first major choice.
Well, Max, talk to me.
To snitch or not to snitch? Time freezes, metaphorically, until we decide on which of our options is the most favorable outcome. However, unlike other narrative choice-based games, Life is Strange gives the player a unique edge: rewinding time. After choosing a dialogue option, we can rewind time and choose the other one if we so desire. This is a double-edged sword, however. While it gives us the power to see multiple outcomes and choose which one we think is better, it's not always clear which one is better. We may have the ability to see briefly into the future with our rewind powers, but it is only brief. There's still no telling what these decisions could mean down the line. In this case, the principal, Mr. Wells, is very apprehensive if you tell him Nathan Prescott has a gun. The Prescotts are apparently a very wealthy and influential family, and Nathan is something of a poster child to the school, and your only evidence is your eyewitness report. However, not reporting Nathan to avoid the principal's scrutiny means that, well, Nathan gets off scot-free for brandishing a gun. For the purposes of this analysis video, I'll be mimicking the major decisions I made when I first played through the game, so let's report Nathan. Him having a gun seems way too dangerous.
I just saw Nathan Prescott waving a gun around.
The game lets us know that our actions will have consequences, and we're free to move on once we've made our decision. Let's take this opportunity to mention the use of something I mentioned earlier, the butterfly effect. Many of these narrative choice games tout the butterfly effect as something that makes their game unique. That every choice you make, minor or otherwise, will slowly but surely spin out of control until you reach the end of your unique story. In most of these, the player is completely unaware of what would happen if they picked another option, unless they went back and played the game again. And this is typically where they discover that, in some cases, the choices weren't nearly as impactful as they imagined. Life is Strange uses the butterfly effect and its use in other games to its advantage. Rather than following the typical route, they allow you to see the immediate effects of all the options given to you with your rewind power. This design choice was chosen for a very particular reason, and it's invaluable in creating the player experience. By allowing the player to rewind and debate over which option is better, it gives the player a heightened sense of control. Rather than simply feeling as though your actions affect the story, it creates a feeling that you can even manipulate the story to play out as you see fit. You're not simply confined to picking what seems like the best option at the time. You can rewind and re-listen to all your available choices and debate with yourself until you decide on what decision will be most beneficial to you. As we continue through the story, this additional sense of control, or sometimes lack thereof, will become pivotal to the experience Life is Strange delivers. Getting back to said experience, you may be wondering why I've spent so much time describing the beginning of this game in such detail. We're almost 25 minutes into this analysis, and we're not even halfway through episode 1. The reason is because the beginning of Life is Strange is packed with symbolism and foreshadowing for things to come, and I wanted to highlight many of these things in as much detail as I could, as well as give the viewers some insight into how it feels to play the game. Now that I've established all the major aspects the game sets up in the opening act, I can spare myself the scrutiny for the rest of the game and only focus on the important and recurring aspects of the story as they appear. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's continue. The rest of episode 1 plays out in similar ups and downs to its opening 30 minutes. Something crazy happens, you're given a moment to recover, only for something else to happen just as you've gotten your bearings. After the tense run-in with Nathan Prescott and the mystery girl, we're given some time to walk around our campus. It's absolutely covered in small details like graffiti, minor characters to talk to, and a worrying amount of missing persons posters. There are a bunch of minor plotlines that can begin on this campus. Our science teacher has a petition to stop the security officer we met earlier from installing security cameras on campus. We can pick up gossip from other students about how some students, and namely Victoria Chase, are supposedly sleeping with Mr. Jefferson, and we can talk to a lot of our peers. These range from calm, albeit pompous art students to jocks who are seemingly only capable of talking about something called the Vortex Club, of which Nathan Prescott and Victoria Chase are a part of. After we've taken some time in this walk around, we get a text from a familiar number, Warren. He wants us to return his flash drive full of movies, which we left in our dorm. Simple enough. Blocking our way into the girls' dorm, however, is Victoria and some of her cronies. Upset that we stole her thunder by answering that question in class, which we totally didn't have to abuse time to do, she insults us and does a fantastic job of hiding her envy. This is the first puzzle aspect of the game, so to speak. We'll have many more of these as the game goes on with varying degrees of urgency. Using our rewind power, we have to take advantage of the fact that the school custodian is repainting part of the dorm. By watching his actions and rewinding, we can tamper with some of the scaffolding so that when he hangs up his bucket of paint, it falls, coding Victoria. We're presented with a brief choice to mock her for getting messy, or the arguably morally corrupt option of acting as though we feel sorry for her even though we very blatantly caused it to happen in the first place. I'm a softie, so we'll apologize and move on. There's more drama once we're inside the dorm. Our flash drive has actually been re-borrowed from us by Dana down the hall. Except Dana is sexting Juliet's boyfriend, so Juliet has locked Dana in her room. After doing some snooping through Victoria's room, seriously, Max has no sense of privacy, we discovered it was actually Victoria doing the sexting and blaming it on Dana. Juliet lets us inside after the revelation, and we do a bit more snooping in Dana's room, going so far as to notice and pick up a used pregnancy test right in front of Dana.
Max, that's mine. Thank you.
It's starting to get a little weird how little Max seems to care about snooping. Sure, after Dana scolds us, she feels bad and we can rewind to before it happened, but the standard gameplay elements like look at objects in your surroundings work a little odd in Life is Strange. These characters are supposed to be real people, so they do get mad sometimes when we just peruse their things right in front of them, but Max does it anyway because we tell her. This might not seem super important, but it's another insight into Max's character that I feel the need to point out for a revelation we'll have later. Moving on, Dana gives us our flash drive back and we can finally head across campus to give it back to Warren. This isn't before on our way back we find the security guard from earlier, David Madsen, harassing Kate Marsh about something. We have the option of staying back and taking a photo of the incident for proof, much to the dismay of poor Kate, or jumping in and defending her. If anything, seeing that smile on Kate's face is more than enough to persuade me to step in and be a bit of a hero for her. She seems like she really needed that. With our heroing out of the way, now we can head over to Warren. Warren is an awkward, goofy guy who very clearly has a crush on Max, who seems extremely oblivious. People have a lot of mixed feelings about Warren. At worst, people consider him to be some involuntary celibate who thinks Max is friend-zoning him, and at best, people think he's a cute, nerdy guy who pairs well with Max. Why is this? Well, in the first conversation with Warren, there is exactly one line that he has the possibility of saying that just utterly damns his first impression to the player.
So you're sensitive.
Ouch, that sounds awful the way you say it.
How so?
Sensitive usually means won't be having sex with you.
This is an awkward and pretty weird thing to say to someone even if you aren't crushing on them, but I think people blow it way out of proportion. We'll keep an eye on Warren as the story goes on, and I think he proves himself to be a pretty decent, albeit realistically awkward teenager. Before we can ponder this dorky teenager's morals further, however, we're interrupted by Nathan Prescott. He somehow already knows that we snitched on him to the principal not even an hour earlier. Some help Principal Wells is. Nathan does that thing that he does and gets unreasonably angry and violent. Warren is quick to step in and pushes him away, only to get a forehead to the face for his troubles. Before we can get away, we get into our own altercation with Nathan where we scratch him in the face before the both of us are almost run over by a truck. And behind the wheel is...
Max? Chloe?
the mystery girl. But she's not such a mystery, it's our former best friend Chloe who we left behind. We quickly abscond together in her truck, peeling out of the parking lot with reckless abandon. By sheer happenstance, and with a little bit of supernatural intervention, Max and Chloe are reunited after years apart. Chloe looks a little different since the last time Max saw her. The two spend the car ride reminiscing about the past and how much they've missed each other. It's clear from how Max commented on old photos of the two, and from how they describe each other now, that they used to be inseparable friends. However, it doesn't take long before Chloe can't help but reprimand Max for never replying to her texts or reaching out. She's also upset that Max had been back in Arcadia Bay for a few months and never sought her out. The reunion quickly turns bittersweet, as Max has to deal with the guilt of anxiously avoiding Chloe, even though the two of them were best friends. The feeling worsens as we learn that Chloe's father William passed away around the same time Max left for Seattle, and her mother got remarried to none other than David Madsen, the jerk of a security guard who we've had a few encounters with already. This explains a bit more of Chloe's irritation, as for years she had to deal with what felt like every important person in her life leaving her. Pent-up anger and guilt aside, the two can't stay mad at each other for long, Max doing her best to apologize to the rather stubborn Chloe. At the end of the day, they're both just happy to see each other again, Max having to bear the secret that she actually saved Chloe's life without knowing it was her. The rest of the episode is a long, calm sequence spent in Chloe's house. Max can wander around the house she spent many a sleepover in, reminiscing about all the memories she and Chloe shared. Chloe's room itself is scattered with dozens and dozens of details that you can't help but notice. It's clear how much love was put into the design of this room to make it feel like an exaggerated artistic representation of a rebellious teen's bedroom. Digging through her room, we learn a lot about Chloe, both how she used to be and how she's changed. While Chloe used to be pretty happy-go-lucky and used to be a pretty good student before being expelled from Blackwell, the pair used to play as pirates together in the backyard and draw murals together, but now Chloe's hardened a bit without having found her footing. She's angry and doesn't know what to do with it, lashing out at inappropriate people and inappropriate times. While we were gone in Seattle, we find out Chloe had latched onto one person in particular, Rachel Amber. We've seen this girl previously, in fact dozens of times, as her face was hung up all over Blackwell on the missing persons posters. Chloe admits Rachel was her only friend after Max left and her father passed. Rachel was, admittedly, something of a replacement for Max. While the two weren't much the same, Chloe reassures Max they probably would have gotten along. One day, Rachel just disappeared without a word. Chloe's certain something must have happened to her and that she would never have left without telling Chloe where she was going. Max sympathizes with Chloe while internally wondering if Rachel's disappearance has anything to do with the strange occurrences happening to her lately. Max discovers her camera was broken in the scuffle, and Chloe offers William's old camera, which Max accepts. She breaks it in by taking a picture of Chloe dancing on the bed, the two of them sharing a moment. Their reunion is cut short, unfortunately, by the return of David, who immediately begins hassling Chloe. Chloe urges Max to hide in the closet. While inside, David begins getting on Chloe's case about how one of his guns is currently missing and he suspects she took it, which she denies. He also catches her smoking weed, and here's where we're presented with our final major decision of the episode. We can choose to stay hidden in the closet, letting Chloe take the brunt of David's anger quite literally. As Chloe berates him for being so paranoid, David backhands her. David issues a half-assed apology but ultimately blames Chloe for his anger, and Chloe threatens to tell her mother if he ever tries that again. Chloe is somewhat upset by the fact that you just stayed back while that happened, and says she'd rather leave by climbing out the window to go somewhere else, not wanting to share a living space with her stepfather. If we choose to step in, however, we can take the blame for the weed. David will reprimand us for our behavior and state how he considers Max suspicious. Chloe will defend us, and outnumbered, David will leave. Chloe is ecstatic that we stepped in and very recklessly shows us that she did, in fact, take David's gun before suggesting we go somewhere more fun. This decision has a little more nuance to it than the previous ones. At first, we want to defend Chloe as it seems David is overly paranoid in general, and we don't want him to hit Chloe. However, in doing so, we put a target on ourselves and discover that Chloe actually did steal his gun and was lying about it. It's this decision where we start to realize that even though we technically have control over the situation, we really don't. Either decision we make burdens us with information we aren't meant to have, and has very prominent and immediate downsides. While it may be controversial, I chose to stay hidden. I figured it would be easier to avoid being harassed by David in the future, and Chloe would eventually get over being mad at me, but David probably wouldn't. As for David hitting Chloe, I hated to let it happen, but the fact that it did happen means I might get to tell someone about it in the future, and that possibility seemed worth it. It's here that I decided to play the long con. After making our decision, Chloe and Max hightail it to the lighthouse, the same lighthouse from our nightmare at the beginning of the game. Chloe expresses her anger at us for staying hidden, but it quickly becomes apparent she's just mad at life in general and is taking it out on us. Chloe tells us that her reason for getting involved with Nathan is because she tried to get money from him at a party and he ended up drugging her. While she doesn't think she was sexually assaulted, she woke up in the middle of him photographing her and managed to escape. She was attempting to use this information as blackmail to get him to pay her. She remarks about how her reason for doing so was that she and Rachel had planned to leave Arcadia Bay, and she's been saving up money in hopes of doing so. In the middle of their conversation, Max suddenly becomes lightheaded and collapses. We're suddenly taken straight back to where we were at the start of the game, in the eye of the storm. This time around, however, we discover a newspaper stuck on a fence post, and upon reading it, we realize it's dated just a few days in the future. Max is awakened by Chloe's worried yelling, panicked and frightened. She frantically admits to Chloe that a tornado is going to come wipe out Arcadia Bay, and it's happening in just a few days. Chloe is skeptical of this, of course, until snow suddenly starts to fall in the middle of an otherwise warm, sunny day. Chloe asks Max to tell her everything. In the first episode of Life is Strange, DONTNOD shows us a lot. They show us how the game is going to be centered not just around our character, but all the characters and how they interconnect. They show us how our ability to directly manipulate the butterfly effect will be used to put us in situations where there aren't necessarily right or wrong answers, and how sometimes having control can be a burden. They show us how the game is going to put us in situations that make us feel similar to how Max is feeling in the game, and how those situations sometimes feel like they are both out of our control and at the same time a direct result of our time tampering. The game seems to mix the feelings of us having all the control and having none of it, and this will continue to make a return as the game progresses. As the game was released, there were about 1 to 2 months in between each episode. DONTNOD took this time to make adjustments to the story based on player feedback and statistics. For example, I mentioned earlier how the dialogue was a major complaint, with lines like,
Let's talk business. You got hella cash.
Now, why don't you go fuck yourselfie?
Man, are you serial?
Wow, haven't heard that one in a while.
It's easy to understand why people think the game was poorly written. I go back and forth on this issue personally. While it's certainly a bit overboard in the first 2 episodes, the game takes place in 2013. Many of the references and sayings were not that outdated for that time. I was about the same age as Max when this game came out, and I had the pleasure of hearing high school students say things like hella on a daily basis. Not to mention, I've heard things spoken by college students just this year that are much more outlandish. While I would definitely say the dialogue is overdone at times, to call it inaccurate I would say is mostly false. It feels just as weird and awkward as listening to real teenagers is sometimes. Regardless though, using the time they had between episodes, DONTNOD really upped the ante with the writing and translation for the last 3 episodes. Aside from complaints, however, the end of every episode presents percentage statistics about how many players made the same decisions you made, and how many people made others. These statistics speak volumes about the decisions in the game and how they're presented. They also provide good insight as to the mindset most players had while playing the game. For example, the decision to report Nathan was about 60-40 in favor of reporting him. Being so early on in the game, most people haven't had time to really assess their standing in the school. Reporting the kid of a wealthy family and letting someone brandish a gun both seemed like bad decisions, so people probably tended to err on the side of caution. However, with the decision to intervene with Kate and David, over 80% of people stepped in to help Kate. This could be because people had had time to form an opinion about both Kate and David, because they sympathized with Kate, or maybe just because the option of taking a photograph seemed pointless and cold for the time being. You'll also notice decisions like whether or not you touch Dana's pregnancy test, where 98% of players didn't touch it. Sometimes when decisions are this skewed, it's because the player simply didn't notice the decision, like if you rode on the dirty RV or not, where 80% of players didn't do it. Probably because they just didn't find the RV in the parking lot. It's not because there was any consequence to doing so. Decisions like this 98% are very telling in that players are at least somewhat averse to angering characters they don't want to anger. If they have the ability to make sure that things go right, well, why wouldn't they do it? I'll go on record, these percentages are remarkably similar to the ones I remember seeing when I first played the game, so I don't think they've been skewed very much now that it's been out for some time and people are replaying it. The statistics for the first episode aren't super telling, but they will give us very important insight into how players may have felt during later episodes, which is invaluable to this analysis. If you've somehow made it this far into this video having never played Life is Strange, this is a good jumping off point. I've done a pretty detailed summary of the plot up to this point, but I'm about to just touch on the major themes and plot details of the rest of the episodes. Episode 1 is free and available on most platforms, so now is a perfect chance to go play it for yourself. I promise the good bits of the story are still a mystery. As for the rest of this video, we've got 4 more episodes to go. Let's get going. Episode 2 has remained one of my favorite episodes of the series for good reason. Its recurring use of a particular narrative device creates an extremely memorable end that stuck with me for months and really hooked me on this series. The episode begins in the calm of morning, Max taking her time to wake up while relaxing music plays in the background. We can take a look around and see that Max has checked out books and started doing research on time manipulation. While I neglected to mention it in the first episode, we can also water her plant here, just as we could then. I promise this is somewhat important. Our calm morning is interrupted by Max's mother texting her about how the principal has told her about us accusing Nathan of having a gun. Later in the episode, we find that someone, it's Nathan, has vandalized our room and sent threatening text messages to us. This is the first glimpse at the sort of consequences our actions will have. Ignoring it for now, we continue on with our day and go take a shower. We see many people in the hall already up and at it, having discussions in the hallway. Upon investigating, we realize that they're watching a viral video featuring none other than Kate Marsh? The video allegedly shows Kate wasted at a Vortex Club party and making out with a bunch of guys. Anyone who paid any amount of attention knows how extremely out of character that is for Kate, so we immediately know something is afoot. This is one of two prominent themes throughout the episode, Kate's struggle. The episode shows us time and time again how Kate is struggling to deal with the pressure of the video. Kate barely talks to us when we bump into her in the bathroom, avoiding the subject entirely. Victoria writes a URL on the bathroom mirror which showcases the video in question, which we can erase, and everyone seems to be talking about it practically everywhere we go. This is further driven home when we go to return Kate's book. Her room is completely dark. She's covered the window, the mirror, and she hasn't practiced her violin in weeks. Snooping through her room, we discover letters sent by her extremely Christian family expressing their disappointment in her, and some going as far as to tell her she's going straight to hell. At this point, any regular human being would seek to comfort Kate and try to help her. Kate confides in us, grateful that we stepped up for her yesterday. She tells us that she had a minuscule amount of alcohol at the party, not any more than she would drink at church. She loosely remembers feeling woozy and waking up somewhere bright. At first she thought it was the ER, as Nathan Prescott had offered to take her, but she doesn't think that's the case. She can't remember anything else except she woke up outside her dorm without any marks or bruises. Almost immediately, we realize this sounds horribly familiar to what happened to Chloe, and we can assume Nathan drugged Kate. However, upon trying to convince Kate to get help, we're presented with a predicament. Do we tell Kate to go to the police, or to keep things quiet until we can gather more evidence? Kate has no marks or bruises from the incident. She can't remember anything. The only person we can try to implicate has already been shown to be capable of getting out of serious trouble one way or another. It's also implied that this happened at least several days, if not weeks ago, with the video only propagating recently. As it stands, Kate really doesn't have much going for her even if the police do start an investigation. As unfortunate as it may be, it does seem as though we would need more evidence on Nathan if we wanted something to stick, as we don't want to make things worse on Kate or on us. The downside is, Kate is in a terrible mental state and clearly severely depressed. She's ecstatic at the fact that we're trying to help her, but suggesting that she not tell the police immediately kills any positive feelings she had. Kate feels utterly helpless, and suggesting that we don't want to testify for her to the police worsens this. It's absolutely not fair, as the correct thing to do is to go to the police, but the situation we're in makes it a very unappealing option. This is what I consider to be the first truly tearing decision of the game. It's the kind of choice that really makes you wish there were a third option, but you have to pick one. If you took the blame for the weed in the last episode, you may be even less inclined to go to the police, as David may have sullied your credibility already. I could talk about this choice alone for hours, and I'd love to see what other people thought of this choice and discuss it, but for the sake of brevity, we must move on. I, controversially once again, told Kate we need to wait for more proof. I was so torn. I remember debating this choice for nearly 30 minutes on my first playthrough. But similar to the long con I started in episode 1, I wanted to be able to get real justice for Kate, and I wanted to do it right. I wished I could have told her what she wanted to hear, but it was at this moment I decided to take matters into my own hands. Helping Kate was now on my mission list, even if it meant prolonging her hurt for just a little while more. Moving on from a very depressing scene, we need to keep moving, as Chloe's demanded we meet at the Two Whales Diner. The reason being she wants to test out our superpowers we told her about at the end of episode 1. If this sounds like a superficial and arguably selfish reason to meet with us, that's because it is. And it's important we take note of that. Being sucked straight out of a somber, important scene with Kate to a scene with Chloe, who up to this point we've been shown to be irrational and impulsive, can honestly be somewhat frustrating to the player. It's nothing too bad, but it doesn't leave a great taste in your mouth. Again, this is intentional. Just hear me out. Chloe's mother Joyce feeds the two of you, and Chloe wants you to prove that you truly have rewind powers. We observe the goings-on in the diner, rewind time, and predict everything to Chloe, as well as guessing what's in her pockets. It takes a good bit of rewinding to pick up on every little detail, but with some doing, we look like a magician to Chloe. This is enough to convince her, and Chloe quickly goes off on a tirade about how many things the duo could use her power for and the things they could pull off, while Max tries to tell her that her power isn't a toy. While Chloe continues, trying to tell Max how cool it is that she could totally kiss Chloe and rewind so she never finds out, Max gets a nosebleed. Using her power so much is evidently pretty taxing on her. Chloe insists that what Max needs is to truly master her power, and offering to be your sidekick, she suggests they take off to somewhere more private to test her powers further. If you haven't noticed Chloe's childishness upon the revelation of Max's power, it becomes all too evident when she begins to chastise Max for daring to answer a call she receives from Kate Marsh, all because she wants to leave the diner before her mother notices. Of course, this decision isn't much of a decision. Especially considering I upset Kate earlier, there was no way I was going to turn down this call. Chloe can wait, even if she gets pissy. As we'll see in the statistics, most players chose this option, and it's easy to see why. I promise all these little things are adding up to something. Chloe takes Max to her secret getaway, a junkyard of all places. It's here where Chloe pulls out the gun she stole from David yet again, and asks Max to fetch some empty beer bottles so that they can play target practice. And here is one of the most frowned upon segments of the game: bottle hunting. Many players and critics harped on this segment, stating how it was tedious, boring, you get the idea. And while I would say that to an extent they're correct, I also think it's entirely on purpose. But why? Why would a game developer put a section in their game that's meant to be boring? Well, if you've been paying attention, everything about Chloe this episode has been somewhat frustrating. She pulls you away from Kate, treats your power like a toy, gets pissy over something completely ridiculous, and then tops it off by asking you to do the most mundane thing ever that seems to only be so that she can have some fun. So now that all those things have added up, and we're stuck in a boring gameplay sequence, the player is probably at least somewhat frustrated. And guess what? So is Max. Max is visibly not very on board with this idea, and remarks occasionally in her journal entries that Chloe is being childish. Max's frustration is being reflected onto the player through Chloe's portrayal thus far, and by using slow-paced game sequences. This is a huge part of Chloe's character arc, as we'll find out as the series goes on. Basically what I'm saying is, Chloe's irrational and impulsive nature is frustrating to deal with, and this part of the game is selling that to us. It will have its payoff later. For now, let's continue. While we're digging through the junk looking for bottles, Max still comments on the mysteries going on in her life. What happened to Rachel Amber? What exactly happened to Kate? Things like that. We also stumble across a translucent deer. Upon taking a photo of it, all we get is the forest. We can also find a broken down shack in the middle of the yard, filled to the brim with remnants of Chloe and Rachel Amber. Photo booth strips, notes they wrote to each other, mixtapes they listened to. Lots of frankly touching things that showed the two were extremely close. It's no wonder Chloe's so worried about her. These minor moments in the junkyard serve as a reminder stuck in the monotony. There is more going on. Amidst Chloe pulling us away from the other goings-on in Max's life, they still persist in the back of Max's mind, much like they do ours. Once we've found all the bottles, which really isn't as hard or time-consuming as some people made it out to be, Chloe sets them up in a line, and we're now tasked with rewinding whenever she misses and telling her how to fix her aim. Real thrilling superhero stuff. Chloe continues to have us use our world-altering power for lame gun tricks, telling us she wants to do some trick shots by bouncing bullets off of cars. As you could have guessed, one of these options leads to Chloe shooting herself, begging Max to rewind. That's 2 times now Max has prevented Chloe from getting shot. Still reveling in the glory of shooting a bunch of bottles, Chloe tells Max it's her turn, but Max once again blacks out and has another flash of visions of the tornado. Chloe helps her as she comes out of it, and the two realize maybe they need to take it easy. The frequent use of Max's power may be too much for her. Hopefully it's clear by now what this sequence is for. Chloe is using your time powers for her own gain, and even though she clearly means well and truly cares about Max, she doesn't think that far ahead, as is about to be shown. A skeevy-looking guy shows up in the junkyard and interrupts our play session. His name is Frank Bowers, a drug dealer who lives in the RV we've seen around town. Apparently, Chloe owes him money, so it's no wonder why she was trying to scam Nathan out of his cash. It's revealed Frank has Rachel Amber's bracelet, furthering the mystery of what happened to her. Frank claims it was a gift, and things escalate. Having handed us the gun just moments before, we're given the choice of shooting Frank or not shooting him. If we shoot, we realize Chloe wasted all the ammunition. Frank gets pissed, but leaves, thankful to be alive. Chloe applauds our heroics. If we don't shoot, Frank takes the gun from us and teases our incompetence before once again telling Chloe he expects her to pay up soon. Chloe is upset over losing the gun, but is overall just glad she didn't get hurt. I chose to shoot Frank. Since he didn't actually get hurt, and we get to keep the gun, I thought it was most beneficial for the time being. Maybe I would come to regret it later, but I was fairly certain it wouldn't be too hard to avoid harm from Frank. As Max and Chloe leave the junkyard and walk along the railroad, Max persuades Chloe to tell her more about Frank, and there's not much to tell. She knew him because he sold her weed, and she's just now finding out that he and Rachel must have been closer than she realized. Chloe also remarks more about Rachel and how much she cared about her. Max gets another vision of the tornado, and as she comes to, she realizes Chloe's foot has gotten wedged between the tracks as it switches lanes. Using some time kerfufflery, we can either destroy the track switcher or unlock it to switch the tracks back long enough for Chloe to escape. Chloe drives us back to school and gives us some last-minute insights into our time powers, suggesting things like chaos theory and strange attractors. It's a brief reminder that Chloe is fairly smart and was fairly into science when she was in school. Her brashness just overshadows that. As we get another school walk around, there isn't too much to do besides talk to our classmates and rewind time to feed them lines that we know will make them like us more. Seriously, this episode is chock full of these situations. We did it earlier in the episode with one of Victoria's friends, acting sympathetic towards her sick mother. We can do it now to get onto the Vortex Club party list by pretending to be into another girl's fashion sense, or to help Warren with a science project. While Chloe may have been selfishly using Max's power, Max isn't exactly only using it for the important things either. Curious. We can bump into Principal Wells, who tells us that he ultimately didn't find any evidence on Nathan having a gun, and if we raise our suspicions to him about David Madsen mistreating Kate, he accuses us of constantly assuming the worst whenever we see something strange. Frustrating to be sure. We won't go to him for help anymore. Lastly, on our way to class, we see Kate and Mr. Jefferson having a conversation. It's possible to catch a few lines of it, and Mr. Jefferson seems to be dismissing Kate in some capacity, while Kate runs off in tears.
So you can't help me?
I'm trying, but you have to understand my position.
Why? You don't understand mine. Nobody does.
Upon confronting him about it, Mr. Jefferson states that how he wanted to help Kate, there's not much he can do, and he needs to consider the possibility that she very well may have brought it upon herself, referencing how she seems to be holding back the truth. This is almost infuriating to hear, but considering Mr. Jefferson doesn't know what we know, it's not unreasonable to see him take this position. It's just upsetting to see him play things safe when he could be helping Kate. Mr. Jefferson excuses himself to take a phone call, and upon listening in on it, he seems reluctant to have whatever discussion it is at the time. Maybe a disgruntled girlfriend or something. After urging Victoria and Nathan to get out of our seat and stop hassling us, we take a seat and prepare for Mr. Jefferson's lecture. It's at this point where you're sitting here in a normal lecture, you can't help but wonder what exactly you're doing. Everything up to this point has just felt like you've been following the motions and rolling with the punches. What could possibly—
Yo! Some crazy shit is going down at the girls' dorm! Zachary, do not come into my class like that ever again. Listen, everybody remain seated. Dismissed.
Is this for real?
I didn't think she was that messed up.
Who is that up there?
Kate! No! Oh God. She can't die. She can't.
Oh, fuck. In the blink of an eye, we're thrust into a life or death situation, and Max's time powers are waning with her strength. We try to rewind, but we're forced to watch our friend jump off the roof over and over again.
I won't be able to rewind again and again.
We're given one last chance.
Keep going, Max. You can do it.
The world grinds to a halt, and Max pushes her way through the crowd and up to the roof of the dorm. When she reaches the top, she tries to rewind further, only to realize
What are you doing here, Max?
Oh, fuck. The entire episode, Max and Chloe both have been abusing her rewind power, using it for mundane tasks and just useless things. And now when Max needs it most, it's gone. Kate's life is in our hands, and this is our only chance. Seemingly out of nowhere, we're hit with dialogue choices that are some of the toughest ones yet. What do you even say in a situation like this? How do you talk someone down from a roof? You can try and bring up Kate's reasons to live. You're there for her. People will eventually forget the video, anything. You can try and bring up how Kate's family needs her, but were you paying attention? Does she have brothers or sisters? Was her mother the sympathetic one, or was it her father? The anxiety sets in. For the first time in the game, you don't have a chance to rewind your mistakes, and if you don't say the right things, then she jumped. I couldn't save Kate. It's not a fact I'm proud of, but I'd be dishonest to act like I did. This moment absolutely floored me. This game that I had, for a time, written off as a quirky, feel-good adventure game just made me partially responsible for a girl's suicide. As devastated as I was, it was at this moment that I knew this game was going to deliver an experience I'd never forget. I mentioned earlier how there were two main themes in this episode. Well, the second one is responsibility. Chloe and Max are both reckless, using Max's time power for things that absolutely do not warrant it. While Chloe's irresponsibility is a part of her personality and character arc, Max's is a direct result of the player, of us. Max would make careless mistakes like spilling a drink and we'd just rewind it, or dropping a bottle and rewinding it. Sure, these moments forced us to rewind to make progress, but there were plenty of times where we did it willingly. Classmate is rude to you? Rewind it and get on their good side. Said something awkward? Rewind and try again. You have time powers, so why not fix it? If you have the capability of making things better, why not do it? Just as Chloe and Max were, we were ignoring the warning signs. Max's nosebleeds growing ever more frequent, 2 tornado visions in such a short span of time. We didn't care. The game subtly pushed us toward using Max's rewind power irresponsibly, and I can tell you for certain I played right into it. And they got me. They got me good. The rest of the episode plays out in the principal's office a few hours later. Wells interrogates Max, as she was up on the roof, and Nathan, who was hosting the last Vortex Club party where Kate was at when the video was taken. We're given the option to place the majority of the blame on one of 3 people. Mr. Jefferson for not being there for Kate when she came to him for help, David for hassling Kate and treating her like a suspect, or Nathan for drugging Kate and thus causing the video. There's a choice that most people lean toward right away, but let's quickly go through them all. Blaming Mr. Jefferson causes Wells to chastise him for not being there to help one of his regular students. Mr. Jefferson does not defend himself much, although he does try to shift the blame to either David or Nathan depending on what things we told him about earlier in the episode. And he even brings up how Max tried to bring Kate's problems to his attention and he ignored it. He's put under investigation and removed from the Everyday Heroes contest and accepts the outcome, albeit with some evident sadness. Blaming David causes him to become irate, claiming Max is an unreliable source. If we took the blame for the weed earlier, Wells will actually suspend Max. Since we don't have a photo of David harassing Kate, no action will be taken against him immediately. Blaming Nathan causes us to bring up the Vortex Club party and Nathan's alleged drugging of Kate. Because we already told Principal Wells about the gun incident, and we didn't take the blame for the weed, no one has anything to rebut our credibility, and Wells is inclined to at least take us seriously enough to suspend Nathan. At this point, it's pretty clear who we're going to want to blame. Jefferson, while outright rude to Kate, was not the major driving force of Kate's suppression. David is a tempting option, but without any immediate consequence, and my overwhelming rage toward Nathan Prescott, I know what choice I'm making. I played the long con in episode 1, time to suspend this fucker.
Whatever. See you in court.
I'm not sure I would call it a tension breaker, but the episode does give us a little time to try and process what just happened. We spend some time sitting on the campus steps with Warren, who reassures us that what happened was not our fault, and we were the only one who really tried to save her. As the two are hit with a sudden chill, we look up to see a solar eclipse.
Max, there was no eclipse scheduled today. I would know. I would.
I believe you, Warren. I'll believe anything this week.
We're greeted with one of my favorite soundtrack moments of the series, and much like the end of episode 1, we get a montage of characters reacting to this terrible day in Arcadia Bay. Episode 2 threw me for a loop. While episode 1 got me curious about what the series would be like, I wasn't expecting it to go like this. The game took me from curious to hooked in just one episode. DONTNOD's use of the rewind power is some of the most clever interweaving of gameplay and narrative I've ever seen. By introducing such a unique mechanic to us that fundamentally changes the way an episodic story game unfolds, they created an environment where we would abuse that power, and they knew we would. And by abusing it, we face the ultimate consequence. Even if you save Kate, the scene is powerful enough to be one hell of a wake-up call. As the statistics will show, DONTNOD understood that the majority of players, if given a chance, will try to do the right thing. Almost 100% of players erased the link to Kate's video. A choice there was no way you could miss, and had no downside for doing. Nearly everyone did it. Even something small like watering Max's plant, which definitely has no downside, had a majority of players water it in both episodes 1 and 2, and if they did, they'll find that they drowned the plant at the start of episode 3. Do you see what they're doing here? Using the statistics, DONTNOD made the entirety of episode 2 a trap. They knew most players would use their rewind power over and over again, even when the story didn't force them to. And they used that to make the delivery of the narrative much more powerful. They made it our fault. And now we're all too aware that Max's power is not a superpower and has serious consequences for using it. Now that episode 2 has concluded, the premise of the game is completely set. No more aimlessness, no more testing your time powers. There are mysteries in Arcadia Bay that need solving, and we need to solve them, both for Rachel Amber and now Kate. If there were any doubts in our mind that perhaps these weird occurrences weren't related, the stinger at the end of the montage puts an end to them, as we see a red binder with Kate's name and picture, the same one we saw with Rachel's name at the end of episode 1. I won't spend too much time on the results screen, but I will quickly point out some interesting things to support what I've been saying so far. Firstly, I was surprised to see that nearly 70% of players told Kate to wait for proof. It's a gut-wrenching option, and by choosing it, you actually make it harder to save Kate in the end. Basically, every option you choose that makes Kate feel better gives you easier dialogue options at the end where you have less of a chance to mess things up. So I find it curious that over 60% of players saved Kate, even with such a large amount of people disappointing her earlier. This is one of the only choices that I think may have been skewed, as when I played this episode the day it came out, it was nearly 50-50. I wouldn't be surprised if some people looked up a guide to save her, as the dialogue choices weren't timed. Besides that, everything is pretty par for the course. Over 80% of players answered Kate's call, and over 70% blamed Nathan. More people blamed Jefferson than David, but this may be because David's option has a chance of getting Max suspended, and Jefferson's does not. They're pretty equal aside from that. The second screen shows the 94% erasing Kate's video link that I mentioned before, and over 70% watering Max's plant. Also, 77% accepted Warren's invitation to go to a drive-in movie, so maybe people don't hate him as much as the internet has led me to believe. It's also interesting to note that over 70% of players trusted Mr. Jefferson and told him about how David was hassling Kate, rather than withholding it. I think I've said all I can say about episode 2 without going on for another 3 hours. I'd love to hear what those of you watching this think about what I've said, and I'd love to discuss further in the comments. That said, episode 3 is waiting for us. Awakening in the dead of night after what we can assume to have been an all-nighter, Max is still reeling about what happened to Kate. Her social media feeds are flooded with a mixture of kind and not so kind messages for her attempted roof rescue. Immediately, the tension is palpable. Signs of Kate are everywhere. Max has taken in Kate's bunny, the whiteboards outside everyone's room have been changed, a couple of your classmates can't sleep and talk a bit with Max about their grief. There are also candles and photos of Kate placed outside her door, as well as a small memorial by the dorm's front steps. The effects of Kate's suicide are impossible to ignore. In need of distraction, thankfully Chloe wants to meet up so that the duo can do some detective work. We have to sneak past Principal Wells, who is completely plastered and can't open the door to his living quarters. Chloe rather insensitively scares Max when we arrive on campus, and Max calls her out on it. This is the first time we see Chloe genuinely apologize almost immediately. I really appreciate her inappropriate use of humor as a coping method and how Max doesn't pretend that it's compatible with her own methods. It's a nice touch. Chloe explains how she stole David's set of keys and that she wants to peruse the principal's office to see if he has any information on Nathan or others that might help bring this mystery together. As we're sneaking in, Victoria and Mr. Jefferson are leaving the school extremely after hours. Victoria is clearly trying to get too friendly, and Mr. Jefferson repeatedly, politely, shuts her down. Victoria then blatantly tries to blackmail Mr. Jefferson into choosing her photo for the Everyday Heroes contest by threatening him and saying that he was sleeping with her outside of school hours. He cuts her off entirely and angrily storms off. Once the pair have left, it's easy enough to enter the locked school. The atmosphere in this section is fantastic. The original soundtrack is creepy and unnerving and really adds to the tense mood of this episode. Missing a key for Wells' office, we text Warren and he tells us how to make a small explosive from some chemicals in the science lab. We blow open the door, step inside, and rewind, putting on quite the magic trick for Chloe.
Welcome to my domain.
Once inside, we discover a whole lot of information. Connected to the main plot, we discover that David has been working heavily on his surveillance project both for the school and as a personal endeavor. We also discover that Nathan has, on multiple occasions, had his record expunged as his father has threatened to revoke the excessive amounts of money he donates to the school whenever Nathan's troubles are brought up. Nathan has had confiscated drawings such as incoherent scribblings that read "Rachel in the dark room" over and over again. We can also find student records for Chloe, Rachel, and Max. Chloe at one point had perfect grades, but she began acting up and eventually got herself expelled. Rachel was an exemplary student supposedly loved by all, even the faculty. Max is very middle of the road, with notes written about her talent but also her tendency to procrastinate and lack of initiative. It's also at this point that we can notice a tiny, extremely missable detail on Max's record. Max has an IEP, or an Individualized Education Program. An IEP is essentially a document created for a student detailing their requirements for special education. And while it doesn't necessarily guarantee, I believe that it heavily implies Max is somewhere on the autism spectrum. This note was something that I really loved finding. My younger brother is also on the autism spectrum, so this hits very close to home for me and I'm very familiar with the telltale signs. Suddenly, many of Max's quirks and personality traits make a lot more sense. Her general nosiness due to a lack of understanding of social cues, her extreme fixation on photography and specifically film photography, her spaciness and tendency to sit down for a moment of calm to unwind, all of it fits nicely into this explanation. I'll talk about it more in depth after we're done covering all the episodes, but I wanted to bring it up now and express my appreciation for character details like that. It's not something we see very often. Having found some good information, Chloe and Max decide to leave, but not before Chloe finds an envelope in Wells' desk with $5,000 inside. The money is supposedly going to be used as part of a handicap fund to make Blackwell more accessible, but Chloe floats the idea of taking it to pay off Frank. Even though Principal Wells has been shown to be a less than stellar and amoral principal at this point, taking money from a handicapped fund just seems wrong, so we'll leave it. Chloe is pretty easily convinced. This episode has been a pretty big downer up to this point, and it knows that. So the game gives us a bit of a reprieve. Chloe reveals to Max she also has the key to the Blackwell Gymnasium and henceforth the pool. With a little convincing, Max goes along with it and has a late night swim with Chloe.
Tell me you're not gonna stand there watching me like a zombie. Don't you dare! Come stop me, hippie! Okay, you asked for it.
The two share a tender moment together while they talk and have their first moment to unwind since what happened with Kate.
Cowabunga!
Stop. I can't even watch any of those shark shows.
I wish Rachel was here. She would totally love being in here at night. Wish you guys had met each other.
We will.
Your power is changing everything, Max. Especially you. I can already tell. You're not so chicken shit anymore.
Thanks, girlfriend.
You know what I mean. You're becoming like this force of nature.
More like luck of nature. Come on, my power failed trying to rescue Kate. Maybe I'm just stumbling back and forth in time. For what reason?
You didn't stumble when you saved me, Max. And we're obviously connected, since without me, you would have never discovered your power, right?
I don't know.
Well, I do, okay? So just listen to Captain Chloe.
I'm trying. As long as we don't waste this power.
Stop being so goddamn humble. You're like the smartest, most talented person I've ever known. Once you get over yourself, you're gonna make the world bow.
As long as you're there with me.
Don't look so sad. I'm never leaving you.
This scene is one of the most special scenes in the game. Not only does it come at an important character moment for both Max and Chloe, but it also acts as their first interaction that feels as intimate as their friendship used to be. Until now, Max has been mostly trying to appease Chloe, as if she had to make up for her past behavior, despite Chloe's attitude. But now, for the first time that we've experienced, Chloe expresses genuine care and even admiration toward Max, at a moment where Max needed to hear it the most. And yet, it doesn't feel out of character. Chloe still has her kind of punk, fuck everything attitude to her, even in her most earnest moment.
Once you get over yourself, you're gonna make the world bow.
And to top it off, Chloe says something that she herself has probably wanted to hear for years.
I'm never leaving you.
In my opinion, it's perfect. Hannah Tell and Ashley Birch's acting, as well as the music, aptly titled Max and Chloe, just makes it even more perfect. Unfortunately, they are soon cut short as security begins searching the pool area. With some clever maneuvering and maybe some rewinding, Max manages to sneak by the two and drive off before they're caught. We spend the night in Chloe's room, and we're given another moment of solace in the calm of the morning. Max's clothes reek of chlorine, so she adopts some clothes left in Chloe's closet. Rachel's clothes. Chloe has to convince her to try something different and tells Max she looks good as a punk rocker, and follows it up by daring Max to kiss her. After their midnight pool escapades and heartfelt conversations, why not? Chloe gets flustered but demands we don't rewind and take it back.
Damn, you're hardcore, Max.
You're such a dork.
As we go downstairs, we meet up with Joyce, who for a moment mistakes us for Rachel.
Good morning, Joyce.
Rachel, I mean Max.
Joyce tells us a bit about Chloe and Rachel's friendship.
She hasn't had a good friend since you or Rachel. Oh, those clothes remind me so much of her. Such a sweet girl. I'm just hoping she's living large in LA.
Is there any reason that Rachel might be mad at Chloe and left without her?
Chloe could piss everybody off but her. They were almost joined at the head. Reminded me of you and Chloe.
Rachel was so much cooler than me.
You think? Then why has Chloe been telling me she wishes she could be more like you over the past 5 years?
Doubt it. Did she really?
Joyce goes through some old family photos with you and remarks that a photo of Chloe and her father William was the last time she ever saw Chloe truly happy. While both Chloe and Joyce seem to skirt around the subject, William's death seems to have played a much bigger part in shaping their lives than we realized.
Wowzer. I totally remember that day.
I'm glad. William took this picture with his instant camera. Oh, it was the last picture he ever took. He had his car out right after this, and
I know, Joyce. I'm sorry.
I didn't show you this to be morbid. In fact, I want you to have this. This was when my baby was so full of life and light. She was hopeful, positive, everything she's not today. And this was the last time I ever saw Chloe truly happy.
Chloe comes downstairs and purposefully picks a fight with her mother to distract her, allowing us to sneak into the garage to search through David's things, as the two had planned earlier. If we hadn't already discovered it in episode 1, this is where we can discover David is not only surveilling his family in his own home, but had also been vehemently following students. Rachel, Kate, and even Max have detailed tracking records with coordinates and timestamps. As you return with these facts, David returns home from a night of vandalism reports. Oops, that might have been us. Chloe can't keep it together and accuses David of spying, and Joyce expresses concern, but ultimately we are given the decision as how the argument unfolds. We can side with David, stating that we don't have real proof that he'd done anything with malicious intent. This, of course, greatly aggravates Chloe, as now Joyce and David are upset with her, and we've seemingly turned our opinion around out of nowhere. However, if we side with Chloe, Joyce is appalled to find out he's been spying on them in her own home. She puts her foot down and kicks David out of the house indefinitely. While causing family drama isn't necessarily a good outcome, it's hard to resist seeing David get what he deserves for going behind his own family's back.
You can't kick me out of my own home!
It's my home, David, paid for and in my name. You know the law, right?
Oh, I thought I knew a lot of things.
He expresses his frustration, but ultimately gives up and leaves. Chloe and Max decide they've overstayed their welcome and leave to go to the Two Whales Diner, where they discover Frank is currently at. Inside, we can find Frank and Nathan, neither of which are very happy to see us, and both of which mistake us for Rachel for a moment. Nathan seems the most surprised.
Rachel? Whatever the fuck.
With some clever rewinding and dialogue abuse, we can convince Frank to empty his pocket, steal his keys, and then rewind. With the keys, we can enter his RV. His dog is inside, but we can distract him by throwing a bone Chloe found in the garbage nearby. We can either throw it into the street, literally killing this dog for no reason, or just toss it the other way. I didn't kill the dog. Why would anyone do that? Inside Frank's RV, we find what you would expect and some of what you wouldn't. Drugs, a logbook of his sales, as well as some very touching dog memorabilia. Frank's a real animal lover, and rescued his dog Pompidou from a dog fighting ring. However, he also had a love for Rachel Amber. Inside his RV, we find pictures of the two together, some of Rachel posing in her underwear, and some letters written by Rachel about how she was at some point upset with Frank's anger issues and scared of him. This is the first real insight into Rachel Amber as a person that we've gotten from someone other than Chloe or a passing opinion from our peers, and it's not what you would expect. The way Chloe and others had described her made her sound like the perfect person, someone who everyone got along with and someone with a bright future. But here we discover that she was at least partially intimately involved with the local drug dealer, who's probably twice her age. While it's been said by Joyce that Rachel could always see the good in people, this seems like it could be a stretch, especially remembering that David had suspected Rachel of being a drug mule because of how many times he caught her meeting with Frank and catching her with controlled substances. Jesus, was David right? Not to imply that the ends justify the means, but there's clearly more to Rachel than we understand. The mystery of her disappearance is only getting more complex. When presented with this information, Chloe is devastated, to the point of denial.
I can't believe she was banging Frank. Rachel straight up lied to my face. Why didn't she say anything?
Because she knew how you would react.
And she wasn't much of a friend, huh? Just another person who shits all over me. Why does everybody in my life let me down? My dad gets killed, you bail on me for years, my mother gloms onto stepfucker, now Rachel betrays me.
Pissed, she can't stay another minute in the RV and storms off, getting back in the truck to leave, forcing us to follow. As she drives us back to school, Chloe continues to unleash her anger. While justified, she seems to be taking it out on people that don't deserve it, like Max and those close to her.
Chloe, you can't keep blaming me and everybody for everything wrong in your life. It's so not fair.
I gotta blame somebody, otherwise it's all my fault. Fuck that.
But as Chloe's anger snowballs, she lashes out and shows her true colors.
So who do you most want to blame?
My fucking dad, of course. Hello?
You blame William? Really?
Yes, I do. Damn right. He chose to go out that door and leave me forever.
Chloe, your dad didn't choose to leave you.
I know that, Max. My mom actually blames herself. Just because she wanted a ride home from work. Sometimes, even I blame her.
No, you don't.
Yes, Max, I do. Do you know what it's like to wait for your father to come home when you're a kid? And he never does?
And suddenly it all makes sense. Maybe you still won't agree with how she's dealt with her trauma, but personally this at least got me to understand why she acts the way she does. She's been struggling to deal with the grief of losing her father, and it never really went away. As she tried to get over it by acting out, doing drugs, hooking up, things only got worse. She hasn't had an outlet for years, and it's hurt her. Max tries to console her while also telling her she can't take her anger out on Max and those she's close with because it's not fair. Chloe isn't having any of it.
You don't want to hear this, but you're still here, alive, with me. And that is no accident.
You're right. I don't want to hear this.
While she does admit that she doesn't really want to see bad things happen and she just says those things because she can't contain her anger, she realistically is too pissed off to listen to reason, and she needs some time alone. She pulls up to the school and doesn't say a word. As we leave the truck, we get a parallel to when we left her truck in episode 2. Saddened by Chloe's outburst, Max goes back to her room and looks back at the old photos of the two of them. And then, something truly bizarre happens.
Oh my god. What is happening now?
Someday Dad'll get one of them newfangled computers.
I hope the flash didn't scare you, Max. This is a keeper.
Not until I see it first. You know the rules, Dad. Max, tell him. Whoa, hey. You look totally pale. Are you okay?
Yeah, I just... yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, Chloe. Give me the thumbs up or thumbs down.
Well, I might just allow this one into the family album.
You're the boss.
What is this?
But not the cook.
William is
Hint,
here.
hint, Daddy.
Yes,
And
we can't
Chloe is
expect
just
your
a
mom to
kid.
rush home and serve us slackers.
Am I
Who
that
wants to
far
have a
back in
man
time?
You mean pancakes?
In France, they call them
I'm
crepes.
18 years
And a good
old
French
inside my
chef uses
13-year-old
assistance
self.
If you want to eat
How?
I volunteer to break the eggs.
The world is suddenly 5 years younger. We're placed in the Price living room surrounded by eerie white fog as a 13-year-old Max. We also see 13-year-old Chloe. Young, happy. She couldn't be more different. William is still alive. Reliving this moment of Max's childhood, it becomes all too clear why William had such an impact on both Max and Chloe. Just by listening to him, you can tell that many of Max's goofy sayings were clearly something she adopted from William.
I have to go rescue yonder queen at the Save Mart. She doth have many bags of delicious grub for us to feast upon.
You are ridiculous.
You'll be grateful for that someday. Shit, where are my keys?
That's $1 for the swear jar.
You mean your college fund?
When he was taken from this world, his kindness was stolen from everyone, especially Chloe.
Dad.
Don't blow it, because tonight your mother promised to make us a world-famous salmon surprise with chocolate cake for dessert. Max, you'll be here too, right?
She's never leaving me.
That makes all of us.
But we're given an opportunity to change the past. William was killed in a car crash after leaving to pick up Joyce from work. As a young Max, we can take William's keys and make sure he doesn't find them, causing him to take the bus and thus ensuring he never dies.
Max, you are being so fucking strange. You feel okay?
Chloe, I am awesome. We are awesome.
However, once we're back in present day, everything is different.
Hello? Are you even listening, Maxine?
Everything is wrong.
Max. Never Maxine.
We quickly get on a bus, passing by several beached whales, which astounds all of the Blackwell students aboard. The bus takes us back to the Price household. Max is nervous. As she steps up to the front door, we begin to notice more differences. The paint job on the house is finished. It's cleaner. There's a ramp. We knock. The door opens.
Max Caulfield. Taking a break after taking Seattle by storm, huh? We thought we'd never see you again after you left for the big city.
No. I'd never do that to Chloe.
Speaking of, I know she's been dying to see you. Hold on. Chloe! You have a visitor!
And that's the end of episode 3. While episode 2 revolved around Max's power and the repercussions for using it irresponsibly, episode 3 expands upon a theme that we've seen recurring. By using her power once again in an attempt to make things better, in an attempt to fix things, things get worse. Not completely worse. William did survive, but Chloe almost didn't. We've changed her life by keeping her father alive, but we've also changed it by paralyzing her. Once again, the game shows us how our desire to do good can backfire. DONTNOD has been using this storytelling technique consistently up to this point, and this is the most extreme example yet. They already know most players have an innate desire to do good. If they have the ability to make sure that things go right, well, why wouldn't they do it? So they can get away with having a sequence that forces the players, forces Max, to make massive changes to the past, to bring William back to life. Max's most drastic attempt at changing the future to date, and yet, it still doesn't work out as planned. And as we'll see, this action creates more consequences that require even more choices to be made, and I'd bet money we will continue to run into the same dilemma. Max holds such great power, but at the same time, she's not fully in control of the outcomes. At this point, I'm starting to think that maybe we aren't in control at all. With DONTNOD leaving us on such a big cliffhanger, we need to jump straight into episode 4. Episode 4 picks up immediately. Chloe and Max taking a stroll along the Arcadia Bay beach during the golden hour. The beach is absolutely covered with dead whales, and the awkward silence is almost painful. Max does some catching up with this version of Chloe. She's still tough, and demands that Max not treat her like a child just because she's in a wheelchair. She just wants things to be normal, how they used to be. This Chloe is more forgiving. When Max apologizes for not reaching out, Chloe tells her not to worry, and that she's just happy to be with her again. Chloe can't move anything below her neck. She reveals that she never met Rachel Amber, who still appears to be missing. Chloe's accident in question was a car crash. Suddenly, we're hit with a realization. By saving William from a car crash, we caused another? Is nature trying to balance itself due to our actions? Well, maybe not. After all, William died in our timeline, but Chloe is still alive. If that were the case, surely Chloe's crash would have killed her? But it's too much to be a coincidence. We'll be chewing on this food for thought for some time. The two eventually decide to go back home. The Price garage has been turned into a high-tech lair for Chloe to live in since she can't get upstairs. We spend some more time talking and doing mundane favors for Chloe, like fetching her water and wiping her face. We can also speak to William and Joyce around the house. They've both taken out multiple jobs in order to keep up with Chloe's bills, and it's not enough. Chloe's wheelchair, life support, all of it is simply impossible to afford even with insurance. Blackwell even denied Chloe on the grounds that the school couldn't accommodate her needs. So much for that handicap fund. Some people have felt slightly uneasy about this section of the game. Max spends a lot of time remarking about how Chloe is completely incapable of doing things now and living a terrible life. There are questions as to whether these are ableist things to say, as many disabled people live their day-to-day lives just fine, even with their struggles. I don't think that's quite the case here, as this is a very, very specific situation. Chloe is clearly suffering, and on top of it, both we and Max know what Chloe would be doing had she not been paralyzed, and we know how many things she wants to do that she can't now. The episode clearly showcases instances of Chloe not being able to accomplish what she wants, like getting into Blackwell or go stage diving. There's even a moment of calm inside what used to be Chloe's room, now empty, where Max can contemplate what was and what is. These desires are all only things Chloe can imagine now, and I think that's what Max is referring to and what the driving moral argument is about. It's not about whether it's worth living if you're paralyzed, but whether or not Chloe is better off in this particular timeline. Was Chloe happier in the original timeline? Is this timeline worth the struggle? Like many questions in this game, there is no right answer. It worsens when we discover some letters from Chloe's doctors. Her respiratory system is failing, and the letters are clearly trying to prepare Joyce and William for the day their daughter inevitably passes away. Maybe Chloe didn't really survive this car crash. The duo reminisce some more and decide to watch Blade Runner together. Chloe looks at Max like it's the happiest she's been in years before the two inevitably fall asleep. When they wake up, she asks to look through some old photo books together.
Oh my god, look how little we are there. We look like toys.
We notice a familiar photo, and as the two enjoy reliving their happier memories, Chloe makes a confession.
Listen, Max. My respiratory system is failing, and it's only getting worse. This isn't how I want things to end.
What? What are you saying?
I'm saying that being with you again has been so special. I just wanted to feel like when we were kids running around Arcadia Bay and everything was possible, and you made me feel that way today. I want this time with you to be my last memory. Do you understand?
Chloe knows she's going to die, and she wants to go out on her terms. This choice stings. It presents so many debates and arguments, the least of which being the morality of assisted suicide. We saw the photo in the photo book. We can get back to our original timeline. But what happens to this timeline? Does it continue? If we help Chloe die, will Joyce and William find her? And will Max ever be seen again? Will the timeline cease to exist after we leave it? This is another choice I sat on for some time. For the first time, the game gives us a third option, and I don't know. Upon choosing it, Chloe delivers more heart-wrenching dialogue.
Chloe, I really don't know if I can do this. I had another friend who wanted to end it all, and I did everything I could to try and save her life. How can I be responsible for ending yours? I mean, there's gotta be another way.
Max, you were there for your friend, no matter what. Now I'm asking you to help me the same way.
I want to help you, Chloe, but I think my help is hurting.
At least you have a choice. When you want to make a decision, you can just do it. Look at me. I'm at the mercy of everybody. For once, I want to make my own choice. The most important one of my life. Please. Help me, Max.
Before we're back in the same dilemma. Where do you even start with something like this? It upsets me that something so ham-fisted and purposefully gut-wrenching is so effective. Regardless of how we feel about which timeline Chloe was better off in, we now know unequivocally that she doesn't believe it's worth living in this one. And once again, it's our fault. The whole of episode 3 showed us how much William's death hurt Chloe and her family, and we were given an opportunity to prevent that tragedy. And now look where we are. Not only are we face to face with our best friend who's asking us to end her life, but we're also in an entirely new timeline we've created going out on this limb. We don't know what happens when we leave this timeline, or what will happen when we return to the original. Will we return to the original? Of all the choices in this game, this one is the most inconsequential so far, and yet it's also the most effective. It doesn't matter what we choose. We fucked things up far beyond the scope of this single decision, and we have to suffer for it. Just like Chloe. Ultimately, I chose to help Chloe. I just wanted to see her happy, even if it was for the last time.
See you around.
Sooner than you think.
Tears in our eyes, we sit quietly next to our best friend who didn't make it after all. Once more, we go back in time.
Someday Dad'll get one of them newfangled computers.
We're forced to sit through the events of the past once more, watching as we let William walk out the front door forever, knowing full well what will happen to him, and knowing what it will do to this poor, happy Chloe.
Max, you'll be here too, right?
She's never leaving me.
That makes all of us.
Max gives Chloe some words of encouragement before the memory ends.
Max, you are being so fucking strange. Like you're never gonna see us again.
Chloe, I'm so sorry. I tried to make things different for you. I did try. I'm sorry.
I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but come on. You have made things different, like my whole life. You're my best friend. I've got you and a great family. What's to be sorry for? We'll be best friends forever. And when we grow up, we're taking over the world.
Listen, whatever happens, I want you to be strong. Even if you feel like I wasn't there for you. Because I will never abandon you, Chloe. I'll always have your back. Always.
When we're finally back in our real self, we're greeted with the familiar sights and sounds of Chloe's room, and Max quickly launches up off the bed to give Chloe a hug.
Whoa, down, Max.
Chloe explains that Max had been spaced out for some time, and that the two had been up all night piecing together clues. Interesting how apparently time had continued to go on even while we were in another timeline, and we didn't come back to the exact moment when we left. So, is the other timeline still going on? We don't have time to dwell, as we're close to putting together the clues. We just need a few more. We head downstairs, where we have a brief run-in with David as he's leaving for good. It's then we break into his locker in the garage and steal his files that he's acquired from his surveillance. Our next stop is Nathan Prescott's room. We bump into Mr. Jefferson on the way there, whom of which Chloe flirts with much to our disdain. After talking around and finding out Nathan has left campus, we quickly head to the boys' dorm and break into his room. And inside, it's creepy. Nathan has some weird tastes, and it shows. There are letters from his father, who sounds more inconvenienced by his son than anything, going so far as to say he's not proud of Nathan because he hasn't earned it. With some more digging, we find what we need, a burner phone behind Nathan's couch. We quickly grab it and leave before we... Ah, shit.
What are you doing in my dorm? You're such a nosy bitch, Max!
Stop right there, Nathan.
Max, I got this. You are so fucking dead! Get off me, bro!
We can choose to let Warren continue his well-earned beatdown on Prescott, and honestly, why would I stop him?
You like to hurt people, huh? Like Max? Like Kate?
Yeah.
Like me? Huh? Feel this, motherfucker!
Yes! Oh.
Get off me!
Oh.
Please!
Oh.
Please stop!
He's down. Hey, come on.
Stop.
Wow. That was almost a little rough to watch. As someone who occasionally has anger issues themselves, watching that fight was something of a moment of reflection for me. I've never beat anyone up, but I have physically lashed out at people before, so I know what it's like to have that kind of rage built up inside of you. And watching anyone get their face punched in until they're blubbering and crying is enough to make me question myself. Especially knowing Nathan is clearly unwell. A giant shithead to be sure, but he needs help. Still, choosing to stop Warren allows Nathan to get away with the gun. Not good for us. Even though it hurt a bit to watch, I chose to let Warren beat him up. Honestly, this one I just kept because it was my first instinctual pick, and I felt as though the story would remain more interesting if I stuck with that decision. I love me some emotional turmoil. We thank Warren once we're safely outside, and unfortunately, we brush him off when he offers to help us with whatever we're doing. He reluctantly accepts and stays behind.
Man, that guy is so fucking in love with you.
I know.
Now we're only missing one thing: Frank's clients. We have his logbook, but he's smart enough to give his customers code names. We can't decipher who's who without Frank's help. We drive down to the beach and get ready to confront Frank. Chloe reminds us she has David's gun at her disposal, and we urge her not to use it. The ensuing conversation with Frank is a tough one. Aggravate him, and he lashes out, either attacking us himself, or if we threaten him first, Pompidou comes and attacks. It's possible for Chloe to actually kill both Frank and his dog depending on how poorly it goes. We get Frank's client list either way, but Chloe is clearly shaken up, and also murder is, bad? So, we can do some rewinding, albeit risky considering what happened in episode 2 when we rewound too much, and try to tell Chloe what to do before we start the conversation, as well as adjust our dialogue with Frank. Eventually, it's possible for him to amicably hand over the client list if you convince him that doing so will help us uncover what happened to Rachel. With all the clues we need, we head back to Chloe's room and piece them together. In what I thought was a pretty interesting and brief detective minigame, we pieced together Nathan's license plate, when he bought drugs from Frank, including the night Kate was drugged, and where he was on each night thanks to David's coordinates. The clues lead us to an abandoned barn. It's owned by the Prescotts and has been for decades as we find old letters inside. But alongside the old decrepit interior, there's a reinforced trapdoor. With some climbing and rewinding, we can use physics to pry it open. Inside is a creepily sterile hallway and a locked vault door with a keypad. The digits are worn off, so with some guesswork and rewinding, we can get inside pretty easily. Inside is a grossly clean photo studio. Everything is jet black or matte white, save for a bottle of alcohol and... oh god. The red binders. Dozens of them. There's even an empty binder with Victoria's name on it. Searching through the computers, there's photos of Kate, tied up, barely conscious. It's no secret what happened to her anymore. And beyond hers, pictures of Rachel in a similar state. She looks furious. Lastly, a picture of Rachel and Nathan lying in a grave in the junkyard.
These are all post shots, right? Right?
Chloe, look at her face. She's out of it.
Maybe Nathan paid her a shitload of cash to do this. She probably would have.
I don't think so. Why is he putting her in the ground like that? Where?
The junkyard. Max, we have to find that spot now. Then we can see what he did. There's no way she's dead. No way. She posed for those pictures, Max. I know it. Please, let's go.
Chloe, slow down! Wait for me!
I know exactly where I'm going. Look, this is it. This is it. Are you gonna help me, Max?
Chloe, stop! Look.
Please, no.
Oh, that smell!
Rachel! Oh, Rachel, no, please not her!
Chloe.
Rachel, why?
I'm sorry, Chloe. I'm so sorry.
I loved her so much. How can she be dead? What kind of world does this? Who does this?
The spirit of the deer vanishes. Rachel's been found. And the mystery? We won't be needing her help anymore. Furious, Chloe and Max pull up to the end of the world party. It's here we discover not one, but 2 moons in the sky. Another sign that nature's been completely thrown off course. Chloe doesn't care, determined to find Nathan. We push through the crowds in search of him. Warren stumbles into us, a little drunk, stopping to take a photo with Max. Chloe splits off from us and heads into the party while we do our own searching. We can talk to many of our peers and ask if they've seen Nathan, none of which have. Pushing our way into the VIP section, we find Victoria, and an interesting conversation ensues. Victoria and Max have to decide once again if they're going to be snarky with each other or tolerate the other's existence. If the conversation goes well, Victoria even ends up admitting she's jealous of Max, and maybe the two of them are too much alike. She cares about Nathan, stating that no one seems to care what he's going through, and that while she does underhanded things, she does them because she's convinced it's the only way to get ahead in the art world. Not sure if that excuses her, but at least it's a humanizing aspect to her character. If Max has been nice to Victoria this far, we have the option of warning her about Nathan's dangerousness. She will either believe us or not, depending on her opinion of us. I chose to tell her, and she chose to believe me. She says if she saw Nathan, she would steer clear. As we reconnect with Chloe once again, she also can't find Nathan. It's clear he's not at the party. As we head to leave, we bump into Mr. Jefferson once more, who jokingly states that we look like we're on a mission. We ask him if he's seen Nathan, and he says not since this afternoon, and he seemed pretty upset. He excuses himself to go announce the winner of the Everyday Heroes contest, saying he wished Max had entered. Jefferson announces that Victoria is the winner before Chloe and Max leave the party. It's then Chloe gets a text from Nathan's number saying he knows we found Rachel and that he's going to move her. This prompts Chloe to hotfoot it back to the junkyard to beat him there. We arrive back, using a phone flashlight to maneuver. We discover that Rachel's body is still where it was before, and we've seemingly arrived first, when suddenly...
Oh, no. Chloe! Look out!
What the fuck?
Chloe.
Oh, fuck. Episode 4 cuts to black, and it's over. Chloe is dead. Again. We've been deceived. This twist, in my opinion, was well earned. I was so focused on Nathan and all the clues pointing to him that I had never considered otherwise. There were warning signs that were definitely ignored. Firstly, Nathan isn't stupid, but he's not smart. For him to have his father pay exorbitant sums for a secret photo lab for his messed up interests isn't far-fetched. For him to maintain it, drug and kidnap girls completely on his own, and keep it all a secret, that's far-fetched. Not to mention, we got an incriminating text from Nathan's actual phone number. When he sent us threats, he used a burner phone. Maybe since we stole the burner, he had to use his real phone, but that's a very clumsy mistake to make. Suddenly, Jefferson's lack of motivation to help Kate made so much more sense. Everything makes more sense. But damn, did I not see it coming. And from the statistics and other friends I've seen play, most people didn't. It's a very well done bait and switch. However, with that bombshell hanging over our heads, let's take a second to look over the choices we made, since we haven't done that in a while. Let's see if things are playing out the way DONTNOD intended. The assisted suicide decision is a near 50-50 split, and no surprises there. DONTNOD really laid it on thick with a depressing timeline, and it was a really tough choice. What stands out to me more, however, is how our situation with Frank played out. Over 70% of players took the time to maneuver through that conversation so that no one got hurt, and it was not something you can really do on accident. 22% of players did end up giving in and shooting Frank, but hardly anybody thought that killing him was best. In fact, only 6% did, which is in line with the other outliers from past decisions. I think part of the 6% of people that are always making bad choices are specifically replaying the game and doing an evil run, trying to make things as bad as they possibly can. I think that for the most part, the decisions still indicate that players want to achieve the best outcome they can with their rewind powers. This is somewhat indicative in the choice about beating up Nathan. 60% of people refuse to let Warren continue his beatdown, which is not as high as other decisions, but an impressive number considering how much of a dickhead he's been to us so far. Shooting Chloe, attacking us in a parking lot, vandalizing our dorm, threatening us. He kinda had it coming. And yet, most players still couldn't stomach watching him get wailed on, even if it meant that he kept the gun. What surprises me a bit is how 73% of players got Victoria to believe their warning about Nathan. Nearly 20% couldn't convince her though, which makes me wonder how difficult it was to do so. Perhaps this is the outcome of being rude to her in the earlier episodes rather than trying to take the high road. Even still, only 8% flat out refused to even try to warn her, which is very in line with the aforementioned evil 6%. We only have one episode remaining, and even still, players seem to be acting exactly how we predicted DONTNOD intended them to. Even after so many of their choices lead to poor consequences or didn't actually end up having an impact at all, players are still trying to make the right choices. And with only one episode to go, let's see how DONTNOD brings all of our choices and the story of Life is Strange to a close. The fifth and final episode begins in a disorienting dark room. Max is tied to a chair, coming back to consciousness. The tension is high. We don't know what's happened or what's going to happen. Chloe is still dead. At first we think she's alone, but Victoria is bound and unconscious on the floor beside us. What the hell is going on? We can't move our hands or our Actually, we managed to break one foot free. We pull a cart closer to us and get a good look at photos of us. We look just like Kate and Rachel Amber. Using the photo, we can go back to the time in which it was taken, just like episode 4. We're taken back to who knows how long ago. Jefferson is in the middle of his photo shoot, talking to himself. Listening in, he mentions his obsession with female innocence and purity. He's the one responsible for what happened to Kate, and he used Nathan to assist in his endeavors. He tells Max she's going to die too, and as Max begins to stir, he preps a new dosage to sedate her. Just as the memory is ending, Max kicks the cart, breaking a vial and spilling it all over some of the photos. The future has now been altered, and we're taken back to the present. It's hard to tell when we are in time when we return. In the dark room, there's no way to tell what time it is. There's a new set of photos on the cart now, one where Max looks more alert. Victoria awakens now, and she asks Max what's happening, stating that thinking Nathan was dangerous, she went to Mr. Jefferson for help. Shit. By trying to help Victoria, we've screwed her. Noticing any running themes here? This time, we use the more alert photo of us and once again go back in time. This time, we're conscious and able to speak, and Jefferson has a lot to say. He's obsessed with capturing the moment that innocence turns to corruption. By drugging women, in his eyes, it is the only way to truly capture them without any pretense. Nathan was involved, but he was not the main culprit of this endeavor. The Prescott family was, unknowingly, giving money to Nathan, who in turn gave it to Jefferson to construct this lab. Nathan looked up to Jefferson like a father, and Jefferson manipulated him and allowed Nathan to try and copy his efforts. Nathan is the one who killed Rachel, accidentally giving her an overdose. And now, Nathan is dead too. Jefferson killed him, and Nathan will be the perfect scapegoat. Jefferson is remorseless. He berates Max for her lack of initiative and waste of talent, and Max bites back.
Fuck you.
Jefferson throws Max's diary in front of her, belittling the selfie she took in his lecture. It's then that Max is able to use that selfie and go all the way back.
I could frame any one of you in a dark corner,
The clock is ticking. We're back in the first lecture we ever sat in. We hear the same speech, see the same bullying of Kate, but this time, we know everything. We have the option of being passive-aggressive almost to an incriminating degree with Mr. Jefferson. We can talk to Kate and give her a heartfelt message.
Kate, listen to me.
I am.
Always remember that you're not alone. I've got your back no matter what happens. So do a lot of other people. We all care. We're all here for you. You need to know that.
Max, that makes me feel so blessed for the first time this week. I don't know what to say.
That's okay. Neither do I. Maybe we could both use a hug.
But most importantly, we can text David Madsen about Jefferson's deed, hoping he will overreact and investigate. After that, we scold Victoria for her actions, and just as her and Mr. Jefferson are getting confused, we turn in our photo for the Everyday Heroes contest.
That was kind of random, Max. What did you mean?
Here's my photograph for the Everyday Heroes contest.
Oh, that was easy.
No. It wasn't easy at all. Whoa!
We're on a plane. Mr. Jefferson has been caught, arrested. We won the Everyday Heroes contest. The police found Rachel's body. Kate is alive. Chloe is alive. We did it. Principal Wells flies with us to San Francisco, and we're taken to a large art gallery filled with photos and critics alike, all of which seem to recognize Max and her photo. For a moment, everything seems calm. A newspaper tells us that both Jefferson and Nathan have been arrested, and the Prescott family is in hot water. Good news for Arcadia Bay. We're given a moment to just revel in our success. We can push past the small crowd admiring Max's photo and get to look at her entry hung up proudly on the gallery wall. But then,
Are you okay?
the storm. The fucking storm. It's still coming. It's still here. It's already here? Max quickly excuses herself to go somewhere quiet. She has 6 missed calls from Chloe, and calling her back, things are dire.
Please answer.
Max, holy shit, man, your vision. It's true. You saw the tornado. It's coming.
What? Oh no. Chloe, where are you?
I'm so fucking scared. I'm by the beach.
Chloe! Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
We're not done. Not yet. We go back to the selfie hanging on the gallery wall, and we go back even further.
Oh shit! Oh, my head. What is going on now? It feels like reality is breaking apart.
Without the photo, we won't be able to win the contest. Everything else should stay the same, which means we can warn everyone of the storm after Jefferson is arrested. Except...
Fuck.
We're back in the dark room. Jefferson burned our diary, frustrated that we tore up our photo. That means we were never able to look at our diary, thus trapping us in the dark room. Thankfully, we still texted David in the past. That much remained consistent. These timelines are starting to get confusing. David arrives in the dark room, armed and ready. He gets caught off guard and killed by Jefferson unless we warn him, helping him through the fight by rewinding repeatedly and giving him a play-by-play. I will admit, this section ends up a little silly. It's kind of ridiculous watching a grown man trip over a very small table and get shot, and there's seemingly only a handful of successful outcomes and a plethora of ways to fail. What should be a heroic moment of teamwork is more of a clumsy ballet of tomfoolery, and it feels mostly like luck when you finally figure out the right combination of choices. Regardless, David finally catches up to Jefferson and gives him a mean hook for his troubles. He's clearly emotional as he unties Max, asking if she's okay.
Lord, Max, are you okay? Are you alright? Can you move?
He states his remorse for suspecting everyone and not piecing it together. It's the first time we really see David humbled, and even when we criticize him for his mistakes, he owns up to them.
That's one of my problems. I'm not good at teamwork. Never was. Even in the service. I should never have set up those surveillance cams. Or kept all those files. I try not to use my service as an excuse, but it's hard to come home after war.
He knows he was wrong in how he treated Chloe, and he wants to change things.
I'll start by apologizing to Chloe. I don't expect her to call me Dad, but maybe she'll stop calling me step-douche.
But then David asks where Chloe is. Suddenly we're reminded that this timeline isn't what we want. Chloe's dead, and this time so is Victoria. It seems that every time we have a moment of success, the game reminds us that we still haven't won. And come to think of it, David's speech has a ring of finality to it, even though this isn't the timeline that we want. And yet, the more we rewind, the more it feels like we can't save everyone. It feels like the beginning of the end. But Max won't give up, not on Chloe, and neither will we. If we want to be the hero of this story still, then the pressure is on. We can hide the fact from David, telling him she's alright, much to his relief. Telling him, however...
Chloe is dead.
This isn't happening. It can't. No, God. Not Chloe. Max, are you sure? Are you...
Yes, I saw her. I saw Jefferson kill her in the junkyard. Last night.
Last night? When I was feeling sorry for myself in my hotel room? I promised Joyce that I would protect her and Chloe. How can I face her and explain this? I never even told Chloe that I... God damn it!
You killed my wife's child, you sick fucker! And you took away my stepdaughter?
David, wait!
It's rough. Depending on who you ask, killing Jefferson is him getting off easy. Since I want him alive, and I don't want to hurt David any more than I already have, I chose not to tell him. But now we're left with the dilemma of figuring out how to fix this timeline, how to save Chloe and the others. There's only one photo that survived the burning of her journal, and Warren has it. Taking Chloe's necklace and Jefferson's car keys from his desk, we call Warren and discover he's holed up in the Two Whales diner. Despite David's warnings, we get in the car and drive our way over to him. It's do or die.
I, Trust Limbo, have been warning you people for years that our culture of sin and entitlement would lead to God striking us down. And I'm the one trapped in this fucking radio station. Somebody get me the hell out of here now! Now, goddammit, how do I pay all those taxes?
Message received yesterday at 9 p.m.
Max, it's Nathan. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt Kate or Rachel or I didn't want to hurt anybody. Everybody used me. Mr. Jefferson is coming for me now. All this shit will be over soon. Watch out, Max. He wants to hurt you next. I'm sorry.
When we get to a familiar street, it's covered in debris and people running for safety. It's here we have the option to use our rewind power to save a handful of our peers from the dangers of the storm, getting them to safety. Fire's raging, the Two Whales is in imminent danger of exploding. We quickly stop the fire from spreading to the diner before taking solace inside. Inside, we meet up with Joyce and Warren, both of which are happy to see us. Frank and Pompidou are here as well, and it's here where it becomes painfully clear what's happening. We're making amends with everyone we know. It started with David. Nathan made his amends as best he could before Jefferson got to him. Now we have a chance to say our goodbyes to 3 more people. We can tell Frank what happened to Rachel. We can tell him that she's dead, that we found her, and who killed her, as well as how. By telling him, Frank is forced to make peace with the fact that he sold Nathan the drugs that killed Rachel. Frank comes to accept what happened. He knew Rachel was too young, and he expected her to leave him, but not the way it happened. He even admits he was jealous of Chloe and how close she was with Rachel, but he doesn't harbor a grudge. Frank has been humbled, and realizes maybe Max is helping him learn to do the right thing.
You know, the one time I met my dad, the bastard quoted the Bible and said he wanted to enter his house justified. In other words, to do the right thing. Me too. And maybe you're helping me get there, Max.
Speaking with Joyce, we can push her towards making a decision about David one way or another. In a way, this is also our way of making amends with David. We can encourage her to forgive him, to continue being the charitable woman she is and helping David recover from his time at war, helping him assimilate back into life with a family. Or we can leave her to her own devices, where she will decide if she forgives David or not based on what happened in the earlier episodes. If I let her choose, she chooses not to forgive him for hitting Chloe, and chooses her daughter over David. The last one in the room is Warren. We finally tell Warren what we've been hiding from him all along, confessing our powers. Warren doesn't hesitate for a moment, and he believes us. Maybe it's because he's in love with Max, and maybe he wouldn't have believed anyone else. But he believed us, and he tells us something that I think we were already starting to realize. That our powers are the reason the storm is raging right now. The dead birds, the whales, the eclipse, the moons, all of it.
I'm not a real scientist, even though I play one at school, but this seems like pure cause and effect. Maybe chaos theory.
Even though he doesn't know for sure, it sure is a theory that makes sense. The more we rewound to try and fix things, the worse things seem to get. Nature has been fighting us every step of the way. Every time we try to save someone, another life seems to get taken. We'll have to dwell on it later. We can express our thankfulness to Warren in a variety of ways, romantic or platonic. Either way, Warren is humbled.
After this week, I realize I don't know shit.
Before going back into the photograph, we can choose to leave Warren, hug him, or kiss him. The more romantic options might not be available depending on how you treated him throughout the game. No matter what you pick, Warren is understanding and encourages you to go back and fix things.
Better go before I get pathetic and tell you not to.
You're not pathetic. You're one of my heroes. And I'm going to make the right choices from now on. I swear.
That's why you're Super Max.
We're dragged all the way back to the end of the world party, where we immediately latch onto Chloe, still alive for now. Max has had it, and she has to convince Chloe to stop being so selfish if just for a second, because Max can't keep saving her. Hannah Tell's performance reaches its peak as Max breaks down and tells Chloe everything.
Stop and listen for once! Fine, Max. I'm listening.
Mark Jefferson killed you, and others.
Jefferson, the art teacher? That's bullshit! Nathan is the fucking serial killer! We saw the proof!
Nathan is dead, and you're in danger. You have no idea what hell I went through to get back here. But I couldn't let you die. You brought me back here, and I can't lose you again. I won't.
Nobody, especially you, should have to go through that. Now we have to stop Jefferson.
Chloe, I can't keep fixing everything if all I'm gonna do is just break it over and over again. I know how this is gonna turn out, and I'm afraid I'm fucking up all these alternate realities.
Wait, alternate realities? What do you mean, Max?
I was able to go back in time to the last day William was alive. I stopped him from leaving, but you ended up in a car crash instead.
You saw my dad again?
You were completely paralyzed. And you were in pain. You were slowly dying, and you asked me to end your life. I did. For you. I didn't want you to suffer in any other timeline or reality. I couldn't bear the thought of you in any more pain.
God, Max. That must have been awful for you. I'm so sorry I had to ask you that.
That's why you should come with me, so we can stay together and stay alive.
So what's your plan?
So listen, in a few minutes, I won't know any of this happened. Nothing. We absolutely have to stay in your room and do nothing. Then we explain everything to David, and we finally let him do his job. You'll have to tell me exactly what I did and said just now. Just explain that I traveled through time using the photo.
Will you believe me?
I'll always believe you, Chloe.
Suddenly, we're at the beach once again. Chloe is still alive, but the storm is still raging. Again, we didn't return to exactly when we left, leaving us disoriented. Chloe explains that Max told her that they would be safe at the lighthouse, so Chloe brought them here. Apparently, Max still acts like a human being, walking, talking, even when she's in another timeline? Wait, are we really fucking up all these timelines? As the two drag themselves toward the lighthouse, Max collapses once again. And once again, we're in Jefferson's lecture, but something's wrong.
Diane Arbus.
Be calm and don't freak out.
Why Arbus?
Yet.
Because of her images of hopeless faces. You feel like totally haunted by the eyes of those sad mothers and children.
She saw humanity as torture, right?
What's going on?
And frankly, it's bullshit.
Nobody even cares?
Shh. Keep that to yourself. Seriously though, I could frame any one of you in a dark corner and capture you in a moment of desperation.
Max is in a nightmare, and the scenes continue unfurling in increasingly dire scenarios.
I just wanted to know if you'd like to spend the rest of your life in my darkroom.
There's no way I'm saying that. No way.
The only person I trusted here, but you never really listened to me. Now I'm never going to heaven. Instead, you've stuck me in hell. Alone forever.
No! Kate, I was only trying to save you.
Don't try to hide, Max! Get over here! Let me capture you! She's posing for me in hell.
Max, sit down. You're taking a timeout no matter what. If this is my nightmare, let me have one sanctuary.
Why did you get rewind powers? You don't even know how to use them. Rachel's dead and you're still alive. Life is so not fair. I wish you would have never come back to Arcadia Bay. You're the real Storm.
Great. Numbers are all over the place. How will I find the right code? Don't kill us, Max!
I guess I'll never dance again, Max.
Right when I was about to start a new life in California.
We're met by everyone we've ever met in Arcadia Bay. Statues still, they look on at Max with fear in their eyes. Every one of them begs Max not to let them die.
I was happy just being your friend.
The cacophony of sounds is almost overwhelming when at the end we find us.
Who are you? I'm you, dumbass. Or I'm one of many Maxes you've left behind. Can you get me out of here? Oh, so you want help? Thought you could control everybody and everything, huh? Twist time around your fingers? I only wanted to do the right thing. No, you only wanted to be popular. And once you got these amazing powers, your big plan was to trick people into thinking you give a rat's ass. I do care. That's why I was trying to make friends. By telling people what they want to hear? You were just looking for a shortcut because you can't make friends on your own. Please, stop playing innocent. You're a goddamn hypocrite. You've left a trail of death and suffering behind you. That was not my fault, you son of a bitch. What about the crap that was your fault? Wait, let me guess. You fucked up time and space for your precious punk Chloe? You think she's worth all that? Of course. She's my best friend. Max, do you really think she has any feelings for us? You're just another puppet. And someday Chloe will destroy... Oh hell, speak of the devil.
Dude, do not even fuck with her head! She knows what we went through together this week, and you don't! There's no way you can break up our team! This is reality! After 5 years, you're still Max Caulfield.
I am seriously glad to see you.
Welcome home, Max. Fasten your seatbelt.
As we slip from the grasps of our other self, we're put on a path. And as we walk down this path, we get to relive all the memories we've made and shared with Chloe these past few days. Feels like years.
You saved me. I'm still tripping on that. Seeing you after all these years feels like...
destiny.
I'll be your faithful chauffeur and companion. I might get on the other side of that door before you, Lupin.
Rachel in the dark room.
Cowabunga! Why, look, an otter in my water. I double dare you. Kiss me now.
It's weird hanging out with you again. Rachel. This can't be real.
When we reach the end, we're finally back in our real body. Chloe has either guided or dragged us up to the lighthouse, and Max has a breakdown. She exclaims that everything that's happening is her fault. She's the reason. But Chloe is the one who ends up having the revelation.
This is my storm! I caused this! I caused all of this! I changed fate and destiny so much that I actually did alter the course of everything! And all I really created was just death and destruction!
Fuck all that, okay? You were given a power. You didn't ask for it. And you saved me, which had to happen. All of this did. Except for what happened to Rachel. But without your power, we wouldn't have found her. Okay, so you're not the goddamn Time Master, but you're Maxine Caulfield. And you're amazing. Max. This is the only way.
I feel like I took the shot 1,000 years ago.
You could use that photo to change everything right back to when you took that picture. All that would take is for me to...
Fuck that! No. No way. You are my #1 priority now. You are all that matters to me.
I know. You prove that over and over again. Even though I don't deserve it. I'm so selfish. Not like my mom. Look what she had to give up and live through. And she did. She deserves so much more than to be killed by a storm in a fucking diner. Even my stepfather deserves her alive. There's so many more people in Arcadia Bay who should live. Way more than me.
Don't say that. I won't trade you.
You're not trading me. Maybe you've just been delaying my real destiny. Look at how many times I've almost died or actually died around you. Look at what's happened in Arcadia Bay ever since you first saved me. I know I've been selfish, but for once, I think I should accept my fate. Our fate.
Chloe!
Max, you finally came back to me this week, and you did nothing but show me your love and friendship. You made me smile and laugh like I haven't done in years. Wherever I end up after this, in whatever reality, all those moments between us were real, and they'll always be ours. No matter what you choose, I know you'll make the right decision.
Chloe, I can't make this choice.
No, Max. You're the only one who can.
I stared at this screen for nearly an hour. Everything in the game has led up to this moment. Ever since the first scene in the game, we've been trying to keep Chloe alive. She was killed by Nathan in the bathroom. She nearly killed herself in the junkyard. One way or another, she would die in the alternate timeline. And Jefferson killed her too. We keep saving Chloe, but nature is clearly telling us we can't. For whatever reason, Chloe is repeatedly taken from us. Whenever we save her, there are consequences. Whenever we changed anything, there were consequences. Maybe it's time to let go. But, God, I can't. It's not fair. We were given this power, and the universe is trying to tell me I can't use it? Chloe doesn't deserve to die, especially not now that she's finally realized her mistakes and what matters to her. But neither does everyone else in Arcadia Bay. I can discuss this choice for hours, and I will. But let's stop beating around the bush. It's time to let go.
Max, it's time.
Chloe, I'm so sorry. I don't want to do this.
I know, Max. But we have to. We have to save everybody, okay? And you'll make those fuckers pay for what they did to Rachel. Being together this week, it was the best farewell gift I could have hoped for. You're my hero, Max. I'll always love you. Now get out of here, please. Do it before I freak. And Max Caulfield, don't you forget about me.
Never.
It's cool, Nathan. Don't stress. You're okay, bro. Just count to 3. Don't be scared. You own this school. If I wanted, I could blow it up. You're the boss. So what do you want?
I hope you check the perimeter, as my step-ass would say. Now, let's talk business.
I got nothing for you.
Wrong. You got hella cash.
You don't know who the fuck I am or who you're messing around with.
Where'd you get that? What are you doing? Come on, put that thing down!
Don't ever tell me what to do. I'm so sick of people trying to control me!
You are going to get in hella more trouble for this than drugs.
Nobody would ever even miss your punk ass, would they?
Get that gun away from me, psycho!
50-50. Or really damn close. That's a powerful choice. Many people criticized this game's end. Another choice-based game whose ending comes down to a button press. Some say it didn't matter what you did in the earlier episodes, that your choices were for nothing. And they're right. But that's exactly what DONTNOD was trying to do. The game had been building up this theme of futility, this excess and lack of control. They'd been foreshadowing how Chloe's life was tied to the storm for one reason or another since the very beginning. DONTNOD used our expectations of choice-based games and used them against us. They delivered a mostly linear narrative in a way that impacted me and many others for years. But at the same time, while our choices were useless in the end, that's not entirely the case. Even though the illusion of choice was woven into the narrative, used to truly drive home the feelings of futility, we're still given a choice. One choice. And it's the only one that truly matters. After everything we've been through, after everything the game and nature have shown us, that our choices don't matter, that we can't save Chloe, we can say, fuck all that, and we can choose Chloe anyway.
Max, it's time. Not anymore. Max, I'll always be with you. Forever.
Sunshine for everyone, but as far as I can remember, we've been migratory animals living under changing weather. Someday we will foresee obstacles through the blizzard, through the blizzard. Today we will sell our uniform, live together, live together.
It's not a happy ending. Neither of them are. I would even say it's not even a satisfying ending. Chloe and Max driving through the wreckage of Arcadia Bay, not saying a word, and just driving off. That's it. It feels empty. It feels hollow. It hurts. And again, I think that's on purpose. And unlike some, I don't think the reason is because it's the wrong ending or the immoral ending. I think it's once again reflecting the feelings of Max onto the player. Max just decided to let an entire town die, her friends and loved ones, all for Chloe. And all that's left to think is, now what? Chloe was ready to die. She accepted her fate and was willing to sacrifice herself for her mother, her friends, for Max. And we went against her wishes. Of course, Max would feel empty and guilty, but there's a vague glimmer of hope that maybe Max and Chloe can live on to start a new life somewhere. But they don't know for sure, and neither do we. So it's left open-ended, with merely looks exchanged between the duo. There's a lot to talk about with these endings and with this game as a whole, so I'll do my best to summarize my thoughts as I start to bring this essay to a close. Where do I even start with all of that? Episode 5 is so much to take in. I could talk about the endings alone for 2 more hours. But instead, let's go over the main themes of the game and how they resurface during the final moments of Life is Strange. From the very beginning, I spoke about how the game uses the player's desire to do good against them, and how the players, even in the face of adversity, continue to try to do good no matter what. As the episodes went on, the players and Max's efforts to fix things got more and more desperate. In episode 5, we end up going extremely far back in time several times as we scratch and claw our way toward a perfect outcome. And just as the game has before, it snatches that perfection right out from under us every time. Desire and futility. The cycle refuses to cease until the credits roll. That much has remained strong and consistent throughout the entire game. The theme of responsibility is also played up to its highest during episode 5, and Max is finally pushed to her breaking point. Since we were given the power to rewind time, both Max and the players have felt a sense of responsibility to keep her friends and peers safe from harm, as evidenced by the end of episode percentages I've brought up repeatedly. And in doing so, we often cause more harm than good. The weight of all these past decisions pushed down on us for the entire game, and as we and Max continue to try to help, the weight finally became too much. She broke down, and in her final efforts, trying desperately to stop Jefferson and save Arcadia Bay, she realizes she can't do both. And it all leads up to the nightmare. The nightmare is a very meta culmination of all of our choices throughout the game. It is as much of a criticism of Max as it is of the player. All of Max's anxieties have come to life and talked down to her, and at the end of it all is a confrontation with herself, pointing out the hypocrisies of our actions. And if you remember some of the things I pointed out during the earlier episodes, a lot of them are harkened back to.
I only wanted to do the right thing. No, you only wanted to be popular. By telling people what they want to hear.
As we get another school walk around, there isn't too much to do besides talk to our classmates and rewind time to feed them lines that we know will make them like us more.
You're a goddamn hypocrite.
And then Chloe interrupts, saving Max from her own demons, where she then remembers everything the two have been through in just one short week. By putting the player through such a sequence of events, falling beneath the weight of our responsibility, forcing us to say goodbye to the people we've met, and reminding us of the futility we've faced so far, DONTNOD set the stage for one final choice. It's more than just deciding who deserves to live and who deserves to die, although that moral decision alone is plenty to chew on. It's about what you believe in, and what the characters want. Do you believe in fate? The game has certainly tried to convince you of it, and the main themes have all revolved around it. But even after all the game has put you through, if you don't believe in succumbing to fate, is it still worth fighting? Chloe has finally realized the selfishness of her actions, and she believes that her family and the town is worth more than her life alone. It's an extension of the dilemma from episode 4. Do we do what we believe is right? Or do we do what Chloe wants? I've said it many times before, but the truth is, there is no right answer. Many people will disagree, however, as this final choice has sparked much debate within the fanbase. A popular sentiment I see is people justifying exactly how many people would actually die if the storm wipes out Arcadia Bay. But in my opinion, it reeks of denial. While some characters may end up surviving, such as Kate if she was recovering in the hospital, it's very clear that DONTNOD is implying that you are choosing either Chloe's life or the people of Arcadia Bay. To downplay that is to miss the point of the entire decision. On the other side of the fence, many people feel strongly that under no circumstances is the life of one person worth more than the lives of many, and the choice is merely that simple. I find that to be a much harder position to argue with, even though I want to. Overall, Episode 5, in my opinion, took all the major recurring themes from the game so far and brought them all down onto our heads like a ton of bricks. I was not exaggerating when I said that I debated my final choice for an hour. I'll never forget that night in my dorm room where I sat in complete darkness at 4 in the morning trying not to bawl my eyes out. And you know what? That seems like a success to me. Life is Strange is unique. When most choice-based games work hard to sell the players on the illusion of choice, Life is Strange uses that illusion to deliver something different. It doesn't promise a dozen different endings akin to something like Heavy Rain. Life is Strange understands that player choice in game narratives mostly serves as an investment tool. Its real purpose is to make the player feel as though they're in control, even when they aren't. By creating a narrative whose themes revolve around the futility of choice and the looming threat of destiny, the game uses player choice in a way that, to me, was extremely fulfilling. I didn't experience going back to this game only to be disappointed by the lack of difference in choices, because that was the point. The choices throughout, those were just there to change the journey, and most of them do change a good amount of the content. For example, if Kate had survived, we would have gotten an entirely cut scene of Max visiting her in the hospital. But when it comes to the end, all the futility leads to one cohesive point. The narrative and the gameplay surrounding our choices meet, and it's at this one point where the player is finally given the ability to make a choice that lasts. You can give in to nature, give in to destiny, fate, whatever you want to call it. You've been led to believe up to this point you can't escape it. It's found a way to kill Chloe in every timeline you've been in. Except, you can still fight. You can spit in the face of destiny and, against all the signs, keep Chloe alive. Whatever difference that makes is up to you. That's what puts this game so high on my list. I didn't care about the occasional bad writing, awkward dialogue, the non-existent lip-syncing, or anything else, because the game gave me something different. A story game that knew what it was, and revolved around a regular teenage girl who just so happened to be queer and possibly on the spectrum. I don't think I'll get to witness another game like that anytime soon. Different isn't always good, sure, but in this case, I think most of the game's differences paid off. At the very least, it was interesting, and that's a lot more than I can say about some narrative games. On the subject of Max's sexuality, something people criticize about the ending is the fact that the only way to canonically end up kissing Chloe, and thus truly pairing her with Max, is if you sacrifice her. The bury your gays trope is a long-standing and extremely frustrating trope for many queer people. It gets old when you finally see yourself in a gay character only for them to be killed off for shock value or whatever reason. This is something I can completely understand. Even though I think the game built itself to the conclusion of Chloe's sacrifice very well, it doesn't make it any more gratifying for those who wanted a happy ending for this reason. Personally, I'm more happy that the game didn't pull any punches. It knew what story it wanted to tell, and it told it. From beginning to end, the themes all connect and they don't stray. There are open ends and untied threads, but the core of the story is tight. We may never know for sure exactly why Max received her time powers. Considering she was almost always punished for using them, it can seem redundant. This is a flaw that has bothered me to an extent, but I enjoy the mystery of it. Sure, maybe it's a mystery that even the developers don't know, but so be it. At the very least, the game leaves things open for discussion. And discuss people have. To this day, the game has what's considered a 10 out of 10 on Steam, where over 95% of people who left a review recommended the game. That's absolutely crazy to me, as with over 100,000 reviews, I would have thought more people would have taken issue with this game. Critics were slightly more harsh, with game sites like IGN taking points off for the dialogue and the darker twists. But overall, these same critics tended to laud the game for its tenacity, themes, and story. I hope it goes without saying at this point, but do I think DONTNOD was successful in delivering the experience they intended to the players? Absolutely. I think from everything I've talked about for the last 2.5 hours, I've covered exactly how the gameplay devices and themes tie into the narrative and how it delivers a linear narrative in a more impactful way than you would have gotten if it was a movie. Life is Strange is a very special game, and I haven't even touched on its prequel Before the Storm. Life is Strange created a universe that's compelling and interesting with emotional characters you can either love or hate, and a supernatural mystery plot that may never fully unravel itself. It's a game that I'll never forget, and I can only hope and pray to get to experience something even better one day. Thanks for watching.